Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Our program is about to begin. welcome Mirabella Brocate El Bazi of Semafor.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on day 3 of Semafor World Economy. I'm Mirabella Brocate El Bazi, Chief Brand and Strategy Officer here at Semafor, and I'm so delighted to welcome you all today. Semafor was launched just 3 years ago at a time defined by information overload, eroding trust, and accelerating complexity. We set out to provide the antidote: fair-minded, transparent, and global intelligence for the new world economy. Semafor World Economy brings that vision to life. It's now the largest gathering of global CEOs in America. This year, we'll convene more than 500 CEOs, 25 G20 finance ministers and central bankers, a quarter of the US Senate, and hundreds of top leaders across business and government from over 90 countries. The discussions that you'll hear across this whole week are powered by our global newsroom. Our journalists have gathered here from across Europe, the Gulf, Africa, and Asia. Our conversations are going to focus on how leaders can navigate extraordinary complexity by curating the richest insights, ideas, and diverse perspectives across the new world economy. This morning's session, Taking the Pulse of Consumer Markets, will examine how and why consumer sentiment remains such a decisive force in the global economy, reflecting not only financial conditions, but also cultural attitudes around risk, stability, and opportunity. Our conversations will explore how businesses are identifying what is strengthening and what is fracturing among consumers, and what insights are indicating around future growth. I'd love to express our gratitude to PMI for their founding partnership on this track, and to Lippincott for their supporting partnership. We're so grateful to their support of independent journalism. And with that, let's get to the news.
Please welcome Noah Horowitz of Art Basel, Patrice Louvet of Ralph Lauren, and Imran Ahmed of Business of Fashion.
Good morning, everyone. As we just heard, this content block is about taking the pulse of the consumer, and I can't think of two better people to do that with this morning. Patrice Louvet runs Ralph Lauren, which has been one of the great outperformance stories in our industry, the global fashion industry. Revenue up 12% last quarter, earnings up 29%, growth in every region, including China. At a time when most luxury and fashion companies are struggling to grow, some of them are even going backwards. But Ralph Lauren has raised its guidance 3 times this year. For his part, Noah Horowitz runs Art Basel, which has gone from 3 to 5 art fairs, adding Art Basel Paris, and debuting Art Basel Qatar just a couple of months ago. In a market where over 400 art fairs exist and are fighting for the same collectors, and fair fatigue is a real phenomenon, Art Basel keeps expanding. So the main question for all of us this morning is quite simple. What did these two business leaders see in the global consumer that others are missing? And Patrice, I wanted to start with you. Your consumer, as I just said, is spending more, they're trading up. What are you seeing and taking away from the kind of state of the global consumer right now? And what are perhaps others missing?
Good morning. Nice to see all of you here. Well, I had the opportunity to just come back from China and the West Coast in the span of a couple of weeks, and I think those were good illustrations of what we're experiencing. Now, our consumer base is proven to be pretty resilient and has been for some time now. We tend to have a more elevated consumer base, right? Average income is above $100,000. And what we are hearing from them is, one, they're really leaning into quality and trusted quality. Two, they're looking for brands that are clear on who they are. And you know this industry even better than I do. And there are many brands who are searching for their identity or going back to their original identity. And then 3 is the notion of value, which, I come from the FMCG world where we talk a lot about value. We don't talk as much about value in the luxury space. but it's as important, right? So I think the value equation that our teams have developed around the world on the range of products that we have, whether that's Ralph's Coffee or a tuxedo, is compelling. And I think the combination of these three elements, quality, clear on what we stand for, with values that resonate, and value perception that is strong, is what's fueling our growth.
Okay. Now let's turn to your customer, which probably has some interesting overlap with Patrice's customer. You've been, we were just talking backstage, you've been expanding in the art fair world, while, as I just said, there's like a preponderance of art fairs. Why is Art Basel standing out in the market at the moment? And what are you seeing in your customer base today?
Yeah, well, I think much the same, right? There's a focus on unequivocal quality and top of the funnel experience, and Art Basel delivers that. We've been doing this for over 50 years. We've grown quickly recently, but steadily, assiduously, and actually quite slowly if you track back. And it very much follows the arc of our industry, which has gone from being very insider industry with a very small group, mainly of European and American consumers, to a more global, increasingly diversified, much more female-forward audience base. And Art Basel, with the addition of Paris, 4 years ago, we launched, as you referred to, in Qatar, just beginning of February this year, just ahead of, it's become a really challenging geopolitical crisis for all of us. And our global audience is very, very focused on extraordinary experiences, extraordinary art, so our selection processes and the things we put in place to get the best and most ambitious work from the great artists of the world out is rung true time and time again. But what's changed in our industry is the overall experientialization of the fair-going experience, the role of community, the importance of what people are wearing, where they're going, where they're dining, where they're staying. It's all come together in a much different way than it used to be. And we're seeing a huge attraction to that around the Art Basel platform globally. Wrapped a few weeks ago in Hong Kong, where we had record attendance. We had over 91,000 visitors at our Hong Kong show. It's become the most important cultural event of its kind in the Asian hemisphere, and it's extraordinary. And you toggle back to Miami Beach, which many in this audience and in the American context are familiar with, which is fills very much the same role in the U.S. market at the end of December.
So I definitely want to get into the experiential elements in a minute, but I do want to double click on this kind of shift we've seen in consumer behavior from the pandemic. Both the art industry and the luxury and fashion industry went through kind of an unprecedented growth spurt, almost gluttony of consumption of art and fashion. But when the lockdowns lifted and people had the opportunity to go and experience real things, the shift, or the stated idea is that there's been a shift towards experiences, which we'll get to. But when you talked about value, Patrice, can we go deeper into that? Now people are being much more discriminating right, about what value is. So when you're thinking about how you offer value, how the customer defines value, how do you do that? And then Noah, we'll get to you as well.
So we have a simple formula. Bear with me. All right, value, the way we talk about it is quality of the storytelling, quality of the product, that's both craftsmanship and style, and quality of the shopping experience, whether that's online or in store, divided by price. Right? Often people just simplify this whole value equation to, well, what's the price for the item? And in this industry, it's so much more than that, because we sell the dream first and foremost. We're storytellers, all right? I'm often asked, what business is Ralph Lauren in? And we're not in the apparel business. We're in the dreams business.
Like Disney?
Exactly like Disney.
Yeah.
I like to think that, when I spent a lot of time with Ralph and I see how he operates with his teams, he is closer to a movie director like Martin Scorsese or Steven Spielberg than he is a traditional designer like Christian Dior or Yves Saint Laurent. So the combination of the storytelling, our ability to make you dream, obviously then translating that into great product, and a unique experience. And I agree, with your point and Noah's point on the fact that expectations from the experience standpoint have gone up dramatically for consumers, whether that's online or in store, is really how to build the numerator, and then the denominator is what price that consumers will
And is
will
that a
accept.
global thing, Patrice, or do you see variations on that, or like more of a weight on one of those three factors in different parts of the world?
So Imran, it's fascinating because I guess we were in Hong Kong at the same time, though. We didn't bump into each other.
You're being punished now, because apparently you were there very quickly and may or may not have made it to Hong Kong.
Yes, next time I'll make sure I stop at Art Basel. It's consistent everywhere we go, right? I mean, I saw that in Chengdu, where we just opened a beautiful store in Chengdu IFS. I saw that in San Diego last week. The consumer sees it consistently, I would say, across cultures and across generations, right? And certainly we're having some really nice momentum with the younger generation, for which the fickle things don't really resonate much with them anymore, right? They want things that are much more grounded, that are much more values-driven. So we talk a lot about value and values. And I think as long as we provide a unique value perception that is superior relative to our peer set and stand for clear values with authenticity and consistency, then this company will be in good shape.
Okay. Noah, when obviously art collectors come in all shapes and sizes, all levels of taste and familiarity with the market. I mean, how do you see the definition of value in the art world shifting post-COVID, and how does it differ by region, if at all?
Yeah, well, first thing on value, I mean, let's be pretty clear. Art is fundamentally valueless, right? It is all a mythology. And that's something that's as true today as it has been in history, right? Selling a Cézanne landscape, selling a great Picasso, you're selling a mythology of what that artist stood for in that moment in time. So it's a relationship to a relationship to a relationship, but there's also something material and real to that. Now that's an abstract way of framing it, but it's very tangible in a way. In terms of what's driving value in our industry today, we're seeing a lot of shifts. There was a moment, the last great boom bust in our industry was the late 80s, when it was a lot of Japanese speculation on impressionist paintings. The 90s sort of leveled out. The contemporary art world as we know it today really manifests at that stage. And in the early 2000s, artists of the post-war era overtook Impressionist and early modern masters as the names driving the market dialogue. We're seeing an increasing sort of diversification of that today, where we opened our flagship fair now in Qatar, where artists from the Manasa region are increasingly in vogue. Hong Kong has been a story of mainland China, but increasingly Southeast Asia and a more diversified set of artists there. In the US context, we've seen over the last years artists of color, female artists, an extraordinary array of different names come into the mix. And I think for a new generation of younger, more self-made entrepreneurs, more female-forward consumers, there is a huge attraction to discovery and to names outside of the Western canon, as there also is from within the Western canon, a huge sort of flight to safety, I'd say in the last 18 months or so, after a huge post-COVID frenzy of speculation of really hot contemporary trending artists, which has eased off somewhat. But as prices have reset, there's a big flight right now to extraordinary, well-priced masterworks, as well as discovery increasingly of artists of a global nature. And that for a global platform like Art Basel is fascinating. And it's something that we've leaned into wholly, as we've also tried to resuscitate and reposition galleries working with and artists working across a whole different array of media.
Does that go beyond the mythology, though, then? Because if there is this flight to safety, are people increasingly considering art as an investment class?
Well, absolutely. And if you go back in time, and it's quite relevant to the moment we're living through now with the oil crises of the 70s and the stagflationary moment of that time, the beginning of art investing as a practice, as an institutionalized practice, actually took hold then. And there have been various efforts really since the early 20th century in which various consortiums and professionals have invested in art on a one-to-one basis. But that practice really solidified then, and I think we'll see it again to some degree now. There's a lot of value buying in the market right now as prices have eased, and there's a lot of extraordinary material with the great wealth transfer that's going to come into the market. We saw this in New York in the fall at the extraordinary Louder sale at Sotheby's and others, that value is going to be driven through that. The last point on this is that the art market is a human market, and it's extremely confidence-driven. So when people of means feel confident what's happening, they lean in, and others follow.
Okay. Let's talk about experiences. We don't have that much time left. The time goes by very quickly here. But you were talking, both of you were talking about the extraordinary importance of experiences. I'm interested in understanding how experiences actually convert into dollars and pounds and won. So, for Ralph Lauren, you mentioned Ralph's Coffee. How does that fit into the overall kind of customer journey from like experiencing a coffee, which has kind of become a thing, the Ralph's Coffee thing? How does that translate into your core business? Because the margins on coffee, sadly, aren't the same as the margins on clothes.
You mean it doesn't make a lot of sense for a designer who started with a tie to be in the coffee business?
I'm curious to understand, like, how what's the link there?
It's a very legitimate question.
Yeah.
So if you zoom out a little bit and you look at what's happened in the lives of consumers, shopping has gotten a lot easier online, right? So for us, digital shopping now, e-commerce is about 25% of the business. AI will accelerate that because AI, through our respective agents, will make that kind of frictionless shopping even more accessible. Humans are going to be looking for even more experiences, and even deeper experiences, and even richer experiences. And so what's interesting with the concepts that Ralph and the teams have developed over time is when you come into our stores, the concept is not welcome to our store, although of course you're welcome into our store. The concept is welcome to our home, all right? And actually, if you come in and you visit it like an art gallery, and you leave with nothing that first time, that's fine. Because we want you to experience the interaction with a sales associate. We want you to admire. We don't have the same type of art as the one Noah deals with, but we do have some art. We want you to experience the art.
You could, though. You could have more.
You're right. We should talk about that. Give me a deal. Maybe we'll think about that. We want you to experience these different rooms that have been set up like Ralph's homes, right? Ralph has homes in Bedford, and he's got homes in Telluride and in Jamaica, and our store concepts replicate that. Coffee fits really nicely into that. It was started as part of a retail concept to energize our stores, but what's very interesting, Imran, is Ralph's Coffee has become a brand.
Yeah. People
want to walk around with the hat and the apron and anything related to it. And I think because consumers are yearning for these immersive, authentic, distinctive experiences, that they've lost in many different areas of their lives, and they're also seeing this whole digital world kind of taking that over as well. And so I'm actually quite hopeful that companies that lean into experiences, we have 5 restaurants, opening one in London very soon. Take note of that. Same thing, they're doing particularly well. Who would have thought a designer could have a successful restaurant? What's the parallel? Well, the parallel is back to what I said earlier. We're in the storytelling business. We're in the dreams business. We're in the experience business. I think as Noah is as well. And we happen to sell apparel, but that's not really the business that we're in.
So how many people have gone to a luxury store and been asked to wait outside in a line? There's, just the other day, a new store opened in London. They invited me over to have a look, and there was like this big burly security guard who basically barked at me, saying, "You stand there," And I was kind of shocked. I was in LA over holidays, and there's this big barrier in front of the store, and again, this burly security person kind of telling me you can't come in. The idea of thinking about a store as a home seems to be in direct contrast with a lot of your peers who tell me, Imran, the reason that happens is because we want to allocate one store associate to every customer, and we want to make sure they have the best experience. Meanwhile, they're making people wait outside on the street. How do you reconcile this more welcoming home approach with the coffee and everything to the more we want to keep you outside experience?
Yeah, so it is a clear differentiator, and our philosophy is welcome in. I think one of the things that differentiates Ralph Lauren from many of the other luxury players and is contributing to our performance is we believe in inclusive luxury. Right? If you look at the types of categories that we offer, I mean, we just sold a $320,000 watch, but you can also buy a $12 pack of tennis socks, right? And we cover the whole range of products. We cover all generations, right? We sell items for newborns and we sell items for 80-year-olds. Ralph's philosophy has always been, we want to be accessible to all of you. And luxury has often been defined as a $4,000 handbag. That's not luxury. That's a very, I think, lazy definition of luxury. If I'm a consumer and I'm buying a $120 polo shirt, for me that may actually be a luxury based on my income level. And so we approach luxury through that lens, which is put ourselves in the shoes of the consumers that we want to engage with, and we want to recruit very broadly, and then make sure that whatever we offer feels like a luxurious experience. You will not see us blocking access to our stores. It's interesting what we see with some of the players in the industry, because often there's a big line outside and the store is empty.
It's empty.
And it's cold, and it's not engaging. And back to your point on experience, I don't know that's what the majority, there may be some consumers who appreciate that, but I don't think the majority of consumers are looking.
Yeah, queuing is not a luxury experience, let me tell you. No, I mean, we're almost out of time, but I'm keen to kind of close off the conversation by talking a bit about like culture as it pertains to this notion of the luxury customer, the luxury art collector. You know, Ralph Lauren also sits in this kind of cultural context with everything that you do in the world of sports, et cetera. Like how makes sense to us of the like link to cultural context in terms of, you know, the way your customers are choosing the artists they want to collect, et cetera.
Well, I think the broad grip around all of this is community and place in the world. And again, whether it's a polo or a coffee or wearing a hat to signify inclusion in a club or some validation, I think we're all looking, especially as we spend more time on our phones and detach from one another, for community and for connectiveness. And Ralph Lauren provides that. Art Basel provides that. Going to galleries, I went to the Hirshhorn yesterday, it provides that. There's a sense of place, community, and connectivity, and I think that that's, you know, more and more and more important as more technological things will speed up the way we consume and understand and process information.
All right. Well, we are out of time, and I promised we would stay on time. Thank you, Patrice. Thank you,
Thank you, Imran. Thank you.
Welcome David Rubenstein of the Carlyle Group and Tony de Koopil of CBS Evening News.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. David Rubenstein, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So, David, it's really an honor to be here with you.
My honor to be with you. I mean, you're running CBS News.
I'm not running CBS News. No, I'm not. I'm appearing on CBS News quite regularly, including tonight. I hope everybody tunes in. But one of the things I've covered a lot in my career as a journalist is the state of America, the promise of America, the reality of America, and also what people think about that reality. And under this track here of the consumer, I wanted to think about consumers of America itself. I talked to Jamie Dimon in a setting like this just a couple weeks ago, and he said the American dream, the idea that if you work hard, you can be pretty much anything you want to be, is slipping away. Do you agree?
The American dream is a phrase that was invented by a writer in 1936, and it was designed to capture the sense that if you come to America or you're born in America, you can rise up on your strength of your merits and so forth and so on. For people who live outside the United States, the American dream still lives. We have 50-some million immigrants in this country. Many of them have come because they believe in the American dream, and many of the most important business and cultural and academic leaders are immigrants. People who are born in the lower socioeconomic classes in this country are increasingly not believing in the American dream. They feel there's no chance for them to rise up, unfortunately. Now, obviously, that's not a good situation because you want people to feel they can rise up in a society, but increasingly it's the immigrants who feel that the American dream is alive for them more than people on the bottom of the socioeconomic structure in our country.
Well, are they right? I mean, think of your own story. Your parents were immigrants.
No, we weren't immigrants, but they were not. My parents were not high school educated.
And your father was a postal clerk.
Right.
Your mother worked in a shop.
Right.
You were not. It was a modest background, and yet you became all that you've become.
I got lucky, and there's always going to be people that get lucky and work their way up, and that's the people that build countries and usually run countries like the United States are people who come from blue-collar, modest backgrounds. Usually, if your father or mother is extremely wealthy and they're extremely famous, it's more of a challenge. So it's more difficult for people who've grown up in the wealthiest of families to rise up because they don't often have the motivation. The motivation often comes from people that have lower society kind of wealth and so forth.
But to that version of you today,
right,
a kid of modest means, modest family, is your message to them, work hard, you can be anything, or sorry kid, the system is rigged?
Well, the message should be follow what other people have done who have similar backgrounds, and you can rise up. It's not impossible to rise up, but people in certain socioeconomic settings now feel that the society is stacked against them in many ways, and they've given up. In many ways, we have a vicious cycle. Let me explain one parts of it. About 18% of Americans are functionally illiterate. They can't read past the 4th grade level. And I don't mean because they're immigrants to this country and they can read their native language, but they can't read English. I'm talking about people who either came here from other countries, can't read their own language, or people born here. 18% are functionally illiterate, can't read past the 4th grade level. 67%, or 2/3, of the people in the federal prisons are functionally illiterate. 80% of the people in juvenile delinquency system are functionally illiterate. If you're functionally illiterate, your chance of rising up is very limited. And one of the problems that's a vicious cycle is that many people learn to read or are encouraged to read by their parents reading to them. And so if your parents can't read to you, you have a real deficit in being able to learn how to read. And that's a big problem in our country. We are not as literate a society as we should be compared to other countries.
That is absolutely true, but people are feeling a certain way about living in this society. One of the things that's synonymous with America, keeping with the theme, is capitalism. Capitalism is less popular maybe than ever, particularly among young people. They like socialism a lot. What's your message to them?
Well, there's different types of capitalism. Capitalism is the best system in the world for creating wealth. It may not be the best system for distributing the wealth to people who are not in the middle class or above. So we have to modify capitalism. Obviously, the Europeans have modified it to have more of a social safety net than we do in the United States, and maybe that's a better system. But in our country, we've tended to value people that create great wealth and give them great laurels and so forth and so on. We haven't valued as much people that help people at the bottom rise up.
You mentioned modifications. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask, do you have a particular modification to capitalism in mind?
Well, if I could do anything, I could change anything in the Constitution, I would say eliminate or greatly change the way we finance our campaigns. Because what you find now is members of Congress, and I host a dinner for members of Congress once a month for the last 11 years. I did one last night, where I try to interview a great historian to make sure that members of Congress know about our country's history because they're making the laws. And right now, members of Congress are very divided. and more so than ever before, because people on the left and people on the right realize you can raise money by appealing to the far left and the far right. Nobody raises money by saying, I'm going to Congress and I'll look at things and figure out what makes the most sense when I get there, and I want to be right down the middle. That doesn't really sell, doesn't raise any money. So if we could eliminate the enormous amount of money that goes into politics, I think that would be the one constitutional change I would make if I could make just one.
Okay, little switcheroo. My question was about capitalism, a change to that system, not the Constitution.
Well, on capitalism, I would say our system works well for creating a lot of wealth, and we encourage entrepreneurs, and we're pretty good at that. If I could do anything on capitalism to change it, I probably would value more the ability of people to distribute some of the wealth to people who are in lower parts of the economic system we have. In other words, capitalism it does work. It just doesn't work necessarily for people at the bottom as much, and we don't redistribute our wealth as well as we probably should.
Let's talk about America's birthday.
Right.
The 250th, July 4th. The Evening News, when we relaunched the show back in January with me as the anchor, we did a value statement. I wrote it, and maybe the thing that got the most attention was a simple statement where we said, we love America. We love the country. Why do you think that would be so controversial right now?
Well, generally, most people love their own country more than anything else. Remember, 95% of the people on the face of the earth are living in the country in which they're born. 95%. So most people stay in the country. Now, they can't leave so readily, but most people tend to like the country they're born in. Now, we have more immigrants here than any other country. We have 50-some million immigrants. No other country probably has more than 6 or 7 million. So people have come here, but generally, as a rule of thumb, people tend to love their own country. In this country, I think people love the country. Obviously, there's always going to be some people that don't. And as we celebrate the 4th of July, I like to remind people what we're actually celebrating. Remember, it was on July the 2nd that this country voted to be independent. July the 2nd. John Adams wrote to his wife and said, this is the day we'll celebrate forever, July the 2nd. So why don't we celebrate July the 2nd as much as July the 4th? Because July the 2nd, 1777, they forgot. They were working at the Second Continental Congress, and they forgot the date. So they finally got organized, and they got it done by the 4th. But the reason we really celebrate the 4th and not the 2nd is because on the 4th, we agreed to the text of the Declaration of Independence. And that was a propaganda document, more or less, to say, here's what we're doing. It was explaining to the public and to King George why we're breaking away. But it had a sentence in there that's the most famous sentence in the English language. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, Thomas Jefferson wrote that. He was a slave owner. So how can he say all men are equal? And what about women? But that sentence took on a meaning of its own over many, many decades, and now it's the sentence that embodies what this country is theoretically about. It's our creed. All people are equal, and we all have the opportunity to have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And other revolutions around the world have been built around that sentence. When people read that sentence, they say, we want to be the same. We have to live up to that creed in this country. We haven't done it as well as we should have, but that's what this country is about, and that's what we're really celebrating, is the idea of equality for people in this country. That's what the 4th of July really is about. That's what the 250th is about.
When you think of the 250-year history of the country to now, do you think, all things considered, the world and its people are better off, all things considered, for the existence of America and her people?
Absolutely. Remember, if there had been no America, you probably would have more and more kings ruling countries and more tyrants ruling countries. You wouldn't have a democracy. We showed that a democratic republic can work, and many other people around the world have liked it and have adopted those principles. Not every country. But yeah, I think the world's much better off for having had the United States, but it wasn't that clear that we were going to win the war. Suppose we had lost the war, where would we be today? I suspect we'd probably have later on maybe broken away, or we could be like Canada, be part of the British Empire. But it wasn't a given that we were going to win. Remember, we hardly had any troops, we didn't have any money, we didn't have equipment and armaments. We basically lost more battles than we won during the Revolutionary War. And eventually the British gave up, not because we were killing them so much, but because the economics weren't worth it to them. The business community in England more or less said to the ruling parliament, look, we want to protect the colonies that we have down in the Caribbean. That's where the money is. The sugar and and molasses and other things we're getting out of the Caribbean. That's real money. What we're getting out of the United States or the colonies in North America is not that great. So they kind of said it wasn't a good cost-benefit analysis, and they walked away from trying to fight the war. In the end, they tried to make sure there wasn't revolts in the Caribbean colonies. In the end, we're very lucky to have won the war because we didn't win most of the battles, and it was mostly because the British, in the end, kind of gave up.
In our final 4 minutes here, because I'm going to be good on time, America is made up of its people, but also the institutions that we build here. One of the most famous, the Kennedy Center. Its name has changed recently. I'm not up to date on the latest name, but it's changed. You were the chairman of the board for 15 years.
Right.
Very good long run. The Kennedy Center is going to be closing because of an emergency repair need. Were you aware that it was so run down?
I thought it was in reasonably good shape. What we had done, we built an addition to it called the Reach, which was an addition that had not been there from the beginning. We always got money from the Congress to repair the center as necessary. I didn't think it was in bad shape myself. I didn't see anything that was really that terrible. Any building that's 70 years old is going to have some issues, but on the whole, I didn't think that the building was falling apart, and I think people enjoyed it. We had about 2 million people coming to our shows every year, and 2 million people just came to visit. And we had a lot of free shows for people that couldn't afford to go to the other shows. So I thought it was a good thing, and it was a good way to honor President Kennedy. Remember, President Kennedy didn't conceive of this initially. It was conceived of many years earlier. When George Washington was President of the United States, getting ready to be President of the United States, he said to Pierre L'Enfant, let's have a cultural center so people can have plays and watch music and so forth. And he tried to get that done. Pierre L'Enfant designed it, but then he got fired. They ran out of money, and they didn't get it done. So the entrepreneurs came along, and they built theaters themselves, Ford's Theater being the most famous. Eventually, in 1958, President Eisenhower signed legislation to create the National Cultural Center, but no money from the federal government. President Kennedy came in and said, I'll raise money. They had national telethons. Leonard Bernstein conducted many of them. One time he had a 7-year-old boy come out and play the cello. Turned out to be Yo-Yo Ma. And they raised enough money. When he died, tragically, in November of 1963, his family said to honor him, let's have a memorial in his honor. So he gave his life for the country. And the result is the country felt we should have a living memorial for him, and that's what it's been. And it's been a great living memorial, and eventually it will be a great living memorial for him again.
Wow. Well, David, on the subject... I'm glad the audience caught that, because I was moving on. In our final 2 minutes, one of the defining features of your life has been teaching about American history, supporting others who teach about American history, and renovating the documents and the destinations that represent American history. You seem like you want to say something, but I'm building to a question here.
Ready.
Ken Burns has a peculiar tradition on July 4th. He and his family read out the entire Declaration of Independence, almost like it's a Seder for America. What do you think of that? Do you think people should read the Declaration on July 4th?
The Declaration is a document that's relatively short. It's not as long as the Constitution. I think it's not a bad idea. There are worse things you can do. But the most important thing is to remember why we care about history at all and why preserve it. And these are the two most important points. One, the theory of history is that those people that don't remember history are condemned to relive the mistakes that others have made. So learn about the mistakes made in the past, and hopefully you can avoid them. And then, why should we preserve the Declaration of Independence, preserve the Washington Monument, preserve any buildings or historic documents? The theory is that if you preserve them, more people are likely to see them. And right now, if the human brain doesn't work in a certain way yet, but maybe in 1,000 years it will. If you go on a computer slide, you push a button, you see the Declaration of Independence, you can push a button and it doesn't, and you go to the next thing. But you learn more if you go see an original of the Declaration of Independence. Just pushing a button and getting a computer slide of it, or the Washington Monument, it's not the same as going to see it. And we should preserve documents and preserve buildings, because by doing that, the human brain still gets more out of it. And by learning more about history, theoretically, we're going to avoid some of the mistakes of the past. That's why we should preserve these documents. That's why I try to do it, why we should preserve some of these buildings. Make sure our country learns about our history. Right now, you can graduate from any college in this country without having to take an American history course. You can be a history major at about 60% of the colleges in this country and not having to take an American history course. You can learn more about American history being an elementary student in China than you can in this country. We don't teach history very much anymore. Everybody's obsessed with being a STEM major because if they don't get a STEM job, they don't think they get a job at Google or Goldman Sachs. The truth is, many people have great jobs who are not STEM majors. And we are obsessed with STEM, but we shouldn't forget history.
Hiring a lot of history majors at the Carlyle Group?
More and more.
All right. David Rubenstein, everybody. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Okay. Oh, you know your stuff.
That's great. You're wonderful.
So,
Okay. That's fine.
stuff out of here.
Hey, how are you? My co-anchor for the ABC Live. River Baby. How are you? Tony. Nice to meet you. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm going to the bureau. Think about the show tonight.
Please welcome Jake Bullock of Cannes, Monique Rodriguez of Miel Organics, and Amna Nawaz of PBS NewsHour.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. Hi, Monique.
Hi.
Jake, good to see you. Thanks
Good
for
morning.
being here.
Thank you for having me.
All right, let's jump right in. For anyone unfamiliar with your companies and with your products, let's talk about what you can tell us about each of your respective consumer markets right now. Help us understand a little bit. Monique, if you had to describe your typical buyer for your products, who are you selling to?
Yeah, so if I can describe my typical buyer, I would say that consumers are buying into education and understanding and an identity. So as I think about like what's shifting in the consumer landscape, consumers want to know not just why, but they want to know like how, and they want to be educated on the ingredients that go into the products that they're putting on their skin. And especially in the textured hair care space, textured hair consumers, their journey is very personal. So they're not just experimenting, they're not doing any type of trial and error, like they're very intentional about the products that they choose to use on their hair. So that journey is very like a personal, deep journey. And so when they're choosing products, they want to be literate on the ingredients that they're using. And so I think that as we think about the future of the industry, the brands that are going to win are the brands that are not chasing consumers, but they're actually mirroring their identity.
Generationally, regionally, do you have a place that you focus more than others?
I'm sorry?
Generationally, age-wise, or regionally, do you have a space you focus more than others?
So we are multi-generational. So we want to span across multi-generations. We're very specific on reaching the Gen Z, like it's the McDonald's approach. So if you continue to reach back to the next generation that's coming up, that generation is then going to tell their parents and their grandparents about our products. So we always mark it down to reach the next generation.
Jake, tell us about Who's Drinking Can.
Yeah, we really sit at the intersection of sober curiosity and cannabis curiosity, right? So these are both hot topics right now. People are really interested in it. And we designed the products to be alcohol alternatives. And they're some of the lowest strength THC, CBD drinks on the market. And really for people like me, millennials, you're getting into your 30s, you can't drink alcohol like you can in your 20s. And that still is our biggest segment, although what we found is it's really the young parents in the millennial demographic that are driving this trend. There are certain moments in life when alcohol really stops serving you well, and one of those is having a young one in the house waking you up at like 6 in the morning.
I don't know what you're talking about.
No one wants to parent hungover. But what's been interesting is we've also found interesting segments outside of that. So our 65 plus population, these folks are great consumers of can.
65 plus.
Their doctors are telling them the best thing you can do for your health in later decades is to reduce your alcohol consumption. they're listening, they're drinking can, and they're realizing that the inflammation they were waking up with actually had to do more with alcohol than turning 65. Wow. And then Gen Z, we also spend a lot of time talking about our legal drinkers, so 21 plus. A lot of those folks now are in Gen Z. And everyone is talking about how they're not adopting alcohol at the same rates that the prior generations had. Yeah. Everyone has different theories. Maybe it's the economy, maybe it's fitness trackers, and maybe it's the unique way in which they socialize, right? Their phones are their friends, and they're constantly connected, digitally to everybody. And so as a result of that, they're maybe not going out on Friday and Saturday nights in the same way. There's also just health and wellness trends that have come in, right? They have options. This is a generation that has access to cannabis products in a way that prior ones didn't. This is also the folks we gave, Adderall to sit still in the class in the 3rd grade, right? So they're familiar with alternatives, and they're often, when given options, choosing something other than alcohol.
Do you feel like there's a stigma attached to your product you have to overcome in marketing it to?
We do. It's definitely eroding, I would say, over time. I mean, our products are not the stereotypical cannabis product, right? No, these are products for people that don't want to get high. They clearly aren't smoking. They want to drink. They have those heuristics around alcohol, which is you crack a can open and you drink it, and that effect is going to be a mild one. So, we put them in little cans. They're pink and orange and yellow, and they kind of have an adult savory flavor to them. It's a very different thing than what folks expect when they hear THC.
Monique, the organics label carries with it all kinds of different concerns, regulatory issues you have to navigate as well, but it matters so much to your consumers, right? They read the ingredients and they care. But there's different rules in different places, right? Tell us a little bit about how you navigate that, especially if your products are available overseas, where regulations may differ. What does that mean for how you market and what you sell?
Yeah, so when I started my brand, obviously I didn't know a lot about regulations. So, we named the brand Mael Organics, right? And then, of course, once we started building and scaling, the bigger you are, the more eyeballs and regulators are watching your brand. So we always pride ourselves in using natural and organic ingredients. But as we grew, we realized that in order to use the actual name organics, your product and formulations have to be at least 90% organic. And our products were not 90% organic. So we used a mixture of both. And so we ended up having to drop the name organic. So now it's just completely Mael. And then, of course, as we continue to grow and we continue to scale into international countries like the UK, we realized that some of the ingredients are heavily regulated and some may be illegal in the UK versus in the US. So we always have to continue to reevaluate the ingredients that we put in our formulations because that's the future of product development, is making sure that we're always compliant globally. And, the thing is, we always have to make sure that we're speaking to our consumers, because now the consumers are very educated on ingredients. And sometimes our consumers know what ingredients are going to be illegal before they become illegal. So they're asking questions quicker than policy change makers can create these policies or regulations for the ingredients. So we just have to make sure that we're always evaluating, always staying on top of what ingredients we're using, and making sure that we're constantly educating our consumers on the different ingredients. And so now, we're just Mael, but we still use the very best naturally sourced and organic materials, but not just labeling it organic.
Yeah, I'm curious because you mentioned you have such a close connection to your consumer base. It feels like you listen to them. Do you feel like you hear concerns or pressure from US-based consumers where there are perhaps fewer regulations around some of the ingredients to try to match or meet the regulatory standards in other countries? Do you hear that from them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think as of most recent, there was a beauty product that it was actually a nail polish. It was an ingredient that was banned in the UK, and consumers started to question, why is this ingredient still being allowed in the US? So I think as a CEO, a founder, we have to take those concerns into consideration and find substitutes or alternatives so we can make sure that even though it may be legal here, that we're still being compliant, at least with our consumers, so they feel safe, because a brand is all about building trust, and we want our consumers to always trust us in everything that we do. So listening to their concerns and implementing that continues to build that trust over time.
Meanwhile, Jake, you have to navigate a very tough sort of patchwork of regulations when it comes to THC state by state, really, at the moment. But there is a new federal law that's set to kick in this fall, part of an agriculture spending package that was passed last year. What does that new law do, and what's it like to navigate the market as it is right now?
Yes, we're kind of in the opposite boat, which is we want regulation that doesn't exist. And if nothing happens in the fall in November, the government has basically determined that the amount of THC that can be in any hemp product is 0.4 milligrams. Mm-hmm. To give you an idea, we make products at 1 milligram, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10. We don't make 0.4. And that's largely because the THC is doing something in the product. We put more CBD in than we do THC, but for really effective CBD products, you need some THC. So it's an important part of what the consumer is getting. It's how they're able to use these products as alcohol alternatives. And so we're in a fight of our lives, really, and we have 6.5 months to go get rules. Unlike some of the actors out there, there is a strong collection of good actors that want regulation. We're telling the government, tax us, use that excise tax for enforcement to get the bad products out of the market, which we all understand there is some highly intoxicating, synthetically derived products that are sort of candy products that are marketed in a way that we wouldn't really think is responsible. Let's get those products out. Let's also offset the huge declines that we're seeing in the Tax and Trade Bureau revenue from alcohol, because that's down 15%, and that there's just a hole in the budget as a result of that. So there's some real opportunity to have those conversations about what regulation looks like. And it's ultimately a question of where do you draw the line? Like, what is the safe amount of THC where Congress and White House feel comfortable that, yes, we should have 3 milligrams of THC in a product, or we should have 1. 0.4 is not going to allow a robust hemp market. Not for drinks like mine, but also, not for your favorite pet treats or for, gummies that seniors are taking to help them sleep, right?
So what does that look like in the fall? I mean, is there an inevitability behind this going into place? Do you feel like conversations with the administration, with lawmakers are going somewhere?
Yeah, I was at the White House yesterday, going to be on Capitol Hill tomorrow. I would say I'm probably spending 50% of my time in this town trying to figure out how to get rules. Wow. If nothing happens, this will go into effect. Like, the ban will happen, so it's written into the law. So. And
that is existential for you. You feel that's like the end of the product if the law goes into effect.
Yeah, it would end all. It would make all of our current products illegal. Now, would there be some sort of innovation where you try to figure out a way to work around? Possibly, but it would be hard, right? Because again, the THC is an operative component of what we're delivering with this product. Obviously, a very mild amount of it, and there are products on the market that are hundreds of milligrams of THC that we look at and say, obviously, we shouldn't allow those. But 2 milligrams, that's our most popular product. That seems safe.
You mentioned, Monique, trust with the consumers. Jake, I know this is a big concern for you too, and a primary value you try to put out there. You're not successful unless people trust what it is they're consuming. I'm always curious about the social media part of all of this, especially influencers, and the way that they're able to move an entire market or push a whole new product out into a consumer space that didn't exist before. How do you approach that? Do you rely on influencers? How do you do that and still balance the trust that you have with your consumers?
Yeah, so I think the influencer landscape has changed a lot from when I started 12 years ago. 12 years ago, you can pay an influencer to post your product and there's no emotional connection or relationship with the brand. And that worked. Nowadays, I feel that consumers are a lot smarter. They understand, what's real and authentic, and they can read between the lines. So I think the landscape has changed for us, where we select influencers who already are in love with the brand, who are already users of the brand. And for us, that is an authentic connection that we can form a partnership. And it's not just like a one-off post or, post on your story, but how do we actually build a partnership where it's more long-term? So it's an authentic, believable, marketing tactic, and not just, pay to post.
Yeah. And for the consumers you want to reach, you mentioned wanting to obviously get into Gen Z and have them spread the word for you. Yeah. Do you find those influencer campaigns, are they the most potent form you have now of marketing? Do you rely on traditional marketing methods anymore?
Yeah, so when I started the brand, we didn't, start in a very traditional marketing way. We were like a disruptor in this space, and it was because of the marketing tactics that we used. So it was very non-traditional. And I feel with the influencers now, the influencers are connecting with brands, they're engaging with brands, and they are looking to us to give them direction on what to post, and they give us feedback as well. So it's very collaborative effort. So we're not just giving them a one-sheet document and saying, here's a direction, but it's how can you also help us work together so we can make this a great post? We don't want to waste our money, and we have seen it to be very effective, influencer posting more so than traditional. And with Gen Z, like TikTok is like our jam. You know, that's where all of the Gen Z community is. That's where they are being very vocal. And I also see that they are very vocal and they say what they want and they say what they don't want. And if they don't agree with what your brand stands for, they will make that very vocal. And, you know, the whole cancel culture is still very relevant. Yeah. So you have to make sure that you're, you know, on your P's and Q's in everything that you do, because they will call you out for it.
Have you had a moment like that you've had to
Absolutely.
navigate?
Absolutely. We've been called out several times publicly. And it was more so when we did our acquisition with P&G. Right. You know, that's a big thing, especially in our community, that consumers feel that when you are acquired, that the ingredients are going to change, that the company can no longer be trusted. So we had to do a full campaign and be very transparent in our messaging to let our consumers know why we did the acquisition. But, you know, you have consumers that still don't understand it and that will still try to tear you down for being acquired because they feel like you've turned your back on the community. And that's not exactly what happened. So it's been very public, and, you know, it's something that we had to be resilient and overcome. And I think even today, we are still working to gain that consumer trust back from simply being acquired, which is something that normally happens in business on an everyday basis. But again, in the hair care, textured hair care space, because hair is such a personal journey, it's such an emotional attachment that our consumers were emotionally attached to the brand, and they felt that the brand was no longer going to have the heart and soul, and that's why it was so upsetting to the community.
You feel like you've come out on the other side of that now?
We are still coming out on the other side. Yeah, it's been 3 years post-acquisition.
Wow.
And you know, our company took a hit. I'm going to be very transparent. Yeah. But we're climbing out of that cycle now.
Jake, tell us about how you use or rely on social media. I imagine the rules around who can be seen consuming your product are a little different.
Yes, yeah. No, I think Monique is spot on in the sense that, like, that authenticity behind creators, behind influencers is so important, and consumers can suss out whether there's a real connection or not. We have a ton of restrictions in our category, and some of them aren't real, right? It's difficult. The ad platforms can't really disaggregate, is this marijuana, which is very clearly illegal, or is this federally legal Farm Bill hemp, which our products obviously are, in which case they should be allowing us to do ads. Well, you know, how do you figure that out digitally? It's really hard. So we're constantly being disapproved on the platforms, and individual pieces of ads are getting, you know, removed because they think that we're selling drugs, right? Yeah. So those restrictions make it really, really hard to do sort of traditional digital advertising. And as a result of that, we've actually tapped a lot of creators and influencers and actually celebrities who have invested in the brand. We have something like 45 now, I think, some pretty fun ones. Actually, just last week, Alana Glazer did a video for us talking about how, as a mom, she loves THC drinks and she loves Can, and Can is her go-to one because it's that mild microdose. 2 milligrams is what she's rocking with as a mom in her 40s, and it's kind of cool to see that, right? Or Dwayne Wade, who's now, like, you know, retired NBA champion basketball player who spends a lot of his time playing golf, and he's like, this is what I'm drinking on the golf course. So those videos have been really cool, and we can use their audience and platform to get out to people that we otherwise wouldn't be able to reach because of the restrictions.
So we got a minute left. I want to stick to time, but I have to ask both of you, because you are both creators of your products and your brands and your companies, and you are now CEOs running these companies, still in charge of all of that. Is it more fun to build it or to run it?
So it's more fun to build it, and I've seen that now on the other side of now selling my company and now entering and building another company. And I realized that, well, number one, I'll try to be quick. When I sold my company, I made a commitment to myself. I said, I do not want to build another company because it's so hard to do that. But now I find myself building another company. So I realized that I actually do like building. And there is a difference between like CEO and founder. When I created my brand, Mayel, I created it from a founder's instinct. Like I was solving a problem for myself with my own hair journey. Yeah. And there was a lot of emotion tied to that. And as a CEO operator, like sometimes you have to take the emotion out of it and you have to really focus on building systems and infrastructure, right? But I do think that you can be both at different times. And a real true operator knows how to like institutionalize a founder's instinct. Right. So I think that there can be both. But what's important is making sure that you don't lose the heart and soul and DNA of the brand as you scale.
Jake.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's more fun to build, and it's why founders get product right, because we're designing for ourselves. It's an N of one. And as a result of that, we create these really real products where, you know, big companies, there's a bunch of people sitting around the table. It ends up kind of looking and feeling like everything else out there.
Jake Bullock, Monique Rodriguez, thank you so much. Please join me in thanking them.
Please welcome Senator Mark Kelly and Robert Costa of CBS News Sunday Morning.
Good morning. I'm Robert Costa with CBS. Thanks for being here. And Senator Kelly, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. You have such a long career in different areas, from space to military service, now to public service in the Senate. In the wake of everything that's happened in recent weeks with space exploration, how do you assess, Senator, the public-private partnership side of space? Where should the balance be? Are there any problem areas from your perspective?
So that transition started during the Obama administration, where President Obama decided, hey, we got to get away from these big contractors like Boeing, Lockheed Martin, and others. Not that they were not doing a sufficient job, but it was really that model of big government contractor with a lot of oversight from the government was not that it wasn't working, it was just rather costly and expensive, and it was in a time when there were a lot more innovative companies that were just starting, SpaceX being a good example of that. I didn't think some of these smaller companies were going to be successful in, well, first, getting a spacecraft into orbit, returning it to Earth safely, being able to commercialize LEO with cargo, and then crew members. The crew member thing is really, really hard to do. To human rate a spacecraft takes a tremendous amount of resources and time and effort and a lot of consideration for the systems and redundancy and fault tolerance and all those things. So I didn't think it was going to be successful. It's been wildly successful. It has transformed the economy in space to our benefit. So, SpaceX and now Blue Origin, but especially SpaceX, delivers payload to space, both cargo and crew, at a fraction of the cost of the space shuttle. When I was flying on the space shuttle, a flight to get crew members into orbit was about $900 million. If you look at the entirety of the program over 135 missions. So this has been a really good transition for us. I think it also needs to be a combination of a couple things. When we go on to do things like what we just did last week, going around the moon, that is what we more traditionally think of a big government program. So we can leave low Earth orbit to these companies, these commercial companies. And by the way, the government is still the contractor, and we have government people involved. It's just that the government doesn't own the hardware anymore, and we let them kind of do their own thing. But I think eventually, if we try to build an economy on the surface of the moon, after we get onto these later Artemis missions, over time we can transition to that more commercial model, and then NASA can go off and maybe send people to Mars.
To use your own phrase, an economy on the surface of the moon, how far away is that potentially in your view, and what's the role of Congress? What should it be in the next 5 to 10 to 20 years to both regulate the commercial side of space and perhaps a lunar economy, but also the defense side of space?
Well, that's a lot, right? So, Congress's role is to provide a plan and the funding and be able to support NASA's plan, if NASA's plan makes sense, or if the administration's plan makes sense, and give NASA the appropriate resources to do hard things. What happened last week was really hard. They made it look easy. It is not easy to send people all the way to the moon, go around the moon, come back. I know we did it in the 1960s, and yes, we did. We put people...
You don't believe the conspiracy theories?
No, and the planet is round. So start with some basic facts. But these things are challenging to do. And right now, only one country can do this. And the Russians haven't successfully landed a rover on Mars, right? Nobody's landed people on the moon except for us. I hope we do it again before our competitors out there. I think it's one of these things that makes this country so great. We're really good at the innovation, and we're really good at inventing things. Not only like specific things, but entire industries have come from an investment here in public education, college education, graduate education, and a culture that is willing to take risks, be innovative, just like go for it in a way that you don't see in other places. So we can continue to do that. And yeah, Congress, has a role, but now these private companies have a role as well. And it is up to us to make sure this stuff is done safely and to the benefit of all Americans, to the taxpayers, and also to our national security. Space is now the next high ground in any conflict with any kind of near-peer adversary. So I'm talking about Russia and China, if we were in a conflict with the Chinese especially. And I do not think that's inevitable, and we should do everything we can to avoid a conflict with any country, has a large military, has a nuclear force. It's in everybody's best interest to try to resolve things peacefully. If that was to happen, space is a critical element of this.
When we look at what's happening in space, there's so much promise with innovation and technology. There's also anxiety. I was recently in Arizona, and in many parts of your own state, you see the construction of these data centers. And you speak to some of your own constituents, they're unsure about, beyond the construction and the labor that comes with the construction of some of these sites, whether there will be jobs for them in the future with the rise of AI and automation. As someone who supports technology and innovation, but also has to represent many working voters who feel economic pain, how are you weighing all of those considerations on the AI front?
Well, and especially right now, half of Americans are having a hard time affording food. Prices are up. People are concerned as they drive to work. Is this the day I'm going to hear that AI has replaced me in my job? And I get it. This technology, I think we can all agree, has tremendous promise. There's resources that we've got to be able to find, hey, how are we going to support the electricity that's going to data centers? We have to make this focused on workers. We've got to make sure that there's a future for work in this country. So the way I think about this, so you have all these AI companies and data center companies, they're just looking for success, right? They've got investors, they've got their employees, they've got a mission. Our job here in government, and I look at it as my job, how do we guide this, put the guardrails in place to get to the right outcome? And what that outcome is that millions of people do not lose their jobs. And if they do, we provide resources so they can be retrained for existing jobs or jobs of the future. There will be more jobs that come out of this that don't exist today. And then how do we build the infrastructure in a way that this is not on the backs of the American taxpayer? So I've got a plan here that we build a fund supported by the AI companies and the data center companies and the companies that benefit from AI to do those things, to retrain or train workers. We could use a model like the unions, do a really good job at this, and then build the infrastructure, because we know, based on the current growth, that it's going to go from 6% of the energy on the grid today to 5 years from now, maybe 12%. Got to provide that power. Can't be on just the taxpayers paying for this. These companies, in time, are going to make a tremendous amount of money. They should use some of those resources, and we should do this as a team, but it is our job here, where there's all these kind of options right now on how this is possibly going to turn out, and we need to get to this place.
And there's so many policy options. Your colleague, Senator Bernie Sanders, he wants a moratorium on data center construction. You are advocating for a fund. Why does a fund, in your view, work as an effective solution here versus higher taxation?
Well, there's also, it's not only, I just introduced legislation, not specifically about the fund, but about getting data center companies and communities to work together early on. And if they agree to a commitment to try to move these projects forward together, they get a benefit. And the benefit they get is on federal permitting, they rise to the top. So they get expedited permitting. They get technical assistance from the government. They get legal assistance. If there are grant programs that communities are eligible for, they get the highest priority. So this could be a win-win situation. We do not want to see over and over again a repeat of what has happened in Arizona a couple times. But we also don't want these data centers forced on communities that don't want them. So I think if we were to, and my goal is to get this legislation passed, we could create the environment that both the data center company and the community can benefit.
Let's turn to Iran. President Trump, as we all know, has bypassed Congress in terms of how he's managing this conflict. As a member of the Senate minority, what are your options here? What's next? Perhaps it's limited in what you can do, but how are you using your own political capital with your colleagues to counter President Trump, if at all?
Well, I mean, as this conflict changes, there's more ways we can approach the war powers resolution issue and give our Republican colleagues an opportunity, to vote on this so they can have a say on, hey, is this the right approach? And try to rein this president in. What I've seen here, first of all, I flew in combat during the first Gulf War, 1991. Iraq invades Kuwait. Very clear strategic goal in that conflict. We've got to remove the Iraqi military from our ally, Kuwait, from their territory. And then we had a plan, put smart people in charge of the plan. So there was a goal, there was a plan, there was a timeline in how to do this, and then there was an exit strategy. I don't see any of that in this conflict. Still hard to see, what was the strategic goal? Sometimes it's getting rid of the uranium. It's been regime change. It has been ballistic missile capability. It has been, at one point, the president said he had a feeling or an imminent threat that something was going to happen in the future. What is imminent about the future? Nothing. Now it's settled on opening up the Strait of Hormuz, which was wide open before February 28th. So now we're in this situation of what is the strategic goal here? We've got 13 dead Americans. We've got our allies that have been attacked. We have our NATO allies and our Gulf allies. Those relationships are now weaker. So we've got to strengthen those relationships, have to get the Strait of Hormuz open, and we've got to restore some kind of sanity to our national security. I think this is going to go down in history as one of this president's biggest mistakes. He's enriching this Iranian regime. It's the same regime, right? The son's now in charge. We consider him, the intelligence community thinks he's a bigger hardliner, than the dad. It's hard to remove the uranium. And this goes all the way back to 2018, when Donald Trump tore up the JCPOA. At that point, uranium was enriched at less than 4%. And they said they were not marching towards a nuclear weapon. Today, it's at 60%.
Senator, after the midterm elections in November, do you expect to make a decision about your own political future and whether you will seek the Democratic nomination in 2028?
Well, the first part, I will make a decision about that, and so far I'm undecided.
When you're speaking with your family?
Yes on the decision.
So there will be you will come out with a decision in the fall of 2026?
I make all kinds of decisions every day about a lot of things. Sometimes I go this way, sometimes I go that way.
Do you think the Democratic Party nationally your brand of politics, your career could resonate with voters nationally?
Well, I don't know if I have a brand of politics because I'm a
Sun
guy
Belt
who
Democrat.
I'm the son of two cops who went to public schools. Was in the Navy for 25 years. I used to fly airplanes off of aircraft carriers. I was a test pilot. I flew the space shuttle for 15 years. Not your typical, politician. So I come from a different perspective than most people in this job. what I'm focused on now is making sure that we do everything we can to have an opportunity, Democrats, to win the House and Senate. So over like the next 6 weeks, I don't think I have a day off. I'm traveling all around the country, trying to make sure we have the resources and have the message that is going to resonate with the American people.
Will you go to Iowa, New Hampshire?
My wife Gabby was just in Iowa. Will I go? I was just in New Hampshire. I was in New Hampshire campaigning for Chris Pappas.
I saw that. Yeah. But final thing here before we leave. Where is your gut right now? You run in 28 for president or you don't? Where's your gut?
My gut is at some point I will make a decision.
Senator Mark Kelly.
Thank you. Thank you.
Please welcome Jacek Olczak of Philip Morris International and Ben Smith of Semafor.
Wow. It's always nice to get applause when you come on stage. Does that happen to you a lot?
Often.
Often, yeah. I think I will not ask you if you're running for president of the United States.
I cannot.
But
regrettably.
Oh, you're disqualified. It's too bad. You run a $40 billion global consumer goods company that is very, that with people across the economic spectrum buying your products. And I guess I wonder, just to begin at this moment of real kind of economic stress and just a very confusing macroeconomic picture, what are you seeing around the world? Like, are you seeing consumers pull back? Are you seeing just the kind of texture of your business?
Not yet, right? Obviously, everyone is worried. I mean, the business is worried, consumer is worried. I mean, every sort of macro turbulences, especially around energy, are not a very nice thing to have. I mean, there are countries which already have some energy scarcities, right? Like the Philippines, Egypt, and so on. So this creates some sort of disturbances on the supply chain and obviously disturbances at the consumer level. The energy prices are not very nice to have, right? In a sense that, I mean, you cannot avoid the energy. And that's the problem, right? It's a problem on a business, not much for our Philip Morris business, is we are not that much dependent on the energy in a sense that this doesn't, is not a significant part of our cost base. It's more from a continuity perspective that, the factories can run uninterrupted, but the real worry is coming, how that's going to erode the consumer's purchasing power.
Yeah.
Okay, that's always the big question. Because then inevitably it's going to translate into how much money people have left to go and buy their products. Now, on a positive side, we are not in a product category when consumers tend to or have the ability to delay the demand, right? It's not I can buy the whatever product next year. Maybe I can still use the current product. I mean, our products, especially the alternatives to cigarettes, is a daily use, daily purchase. This is one of the small pleasure which people have. They will try to protect that sort of a spending for the longest period of time. Now you have a portfolio, right? Obviously, even within the thing that the people cannot delay, don't want to delay, you need to understand that not everyone has the same affordability this week as the last week. So that's the role of the portfolio, how you try to offer a different price points and etc. to the consumers. But this is no, in our case specifically for Philip Morris, then the whole trend in the nicotine business is driven by the smoke-free alternatives, all the products which are better than a cigarette, and there is a massive, solid demand growth in every country. Again, you're talking, I'm talking volumes, not the dollars. You have double-digit, maybe low double-digit, but still a very consistent growth year on year, which means the smokers are looking for a better alternatives. So even if I overlay the macro pressures which we have today, I still feel very confident because we know that we operate in a growing demand category. And that's very important.
Yeah, I think as a conference like this runs almost entirely on Zins. So I hopefully you'll see the spike in your sales. And I should say this is a totally editorial interview. They're a partner of ours, but I'm going to ask Jacek whatever I feel like.
Well, thank you.
Sorry. Did they tell you that?
What is better than if you go for a cigarette break? Zin is better than cigarette.
Actually, before we move off this to AI, there is this sort of meme right now in American media, and you see it in Hollywood actually, that smoking is back. It's back in movies a little bit, and Marty Supreme, everybody's this sort of A24 cool movies. You see cigarettes. I haven't really seen it in the data. You are, in the United States, all in on alternatives and have no cigarette business. What are you seeing? Are you worried that people are going to kind of go back to the more dangerous?
Well, I have said it already a few years ago that, look, ultimately I think a place for cigarettes is in a museum. Like we put to the museum, landline phone. Very few people, I guess if I ask the question, can you dial the number, would be a little bit puzzled what to do with this whole thing. So I think cigarettes at the end will end up in the museums. They are a better way today of providing, giving a consumer the nicotine without triggering all of this massive negative health impact. So that's an opportunity which we have to resolve the problem of smoking, etc. I think it's for us was the very deliberate decisions that when we came with a smoke-free product was not in addition to, but as a replacement to, because that immediately informs your capital allocation, etc., resource allocations, and so on. So you go all in for, I believe, the product which is vastly, vastly better, providing a similar type of benefit to the user, rather than continue selling the product, which, frankly speaking, is not a very good idea from a health perspective.
Are these cultural trends real, though, or is this just sort of nostalgia movie stuff?
Well, you always will have a nostalgia until the product is completely, for illegal reasons, taken out of the market, right? I'm very much in the music. We never banned the vinyls, so the vinyls are still there. Right? They found a market that there are some people, I believe personally quite rightly, which tell you that the quality of the music from a vinyl is better than all of this compressed music which you get from your iPhone. Nothing to do with the quality of the iPhone, but this is the conversations which we have. If one day somebody would come with an idea to ban vinyls, most likely we'll still have a vinyls in some illegal
So cigarettes will be vinyl, they'll be a sort of minor...
No, I don't think we have to go to the bans, but I think we need to inform the audience, inform the smokers, inform the consumers that, look, you have a choice which you didn't have 10 years ago, and I can see this. We operate in 160 markets. Our products are now in more than 100 markets. I'm talking smoke-free products. Everywhere when the people have an access to information, you build the awareness, the demand is growing. So people are looking for a better alternatives, okay? So that's very good from a business perspective. It's also confirmations that our strategy, which we designed, put in action more than 10 years ago, was actually the right strategy.
Have the other big kind of economic conversation here is in Washington, obviously, still a year later, around tariffs. Have you, and obviously, a lot of your business isn't particularly affected by tariffs. Has that been an issue in the smoke-free business?
No, not in the tobacco sector, because the tobacco, you have to go back to the histories, but tobacco always was a very important source of revenue for every government, for every country. And the importance of the tobacco tax collections ranges, and depends on the country, but you're talking 3, 5, 7, or 8% of the total governmental revenue. China, for example, the tobacco monopoly in China is a very restricted market. Tobacco monopoly in China generates about 7% of Chinese GDP.
Is that right?
Okay, this is the real number. Some people will tell you that this is about by a notch higher than Chinese military budget, just to put the things from perspective. So this just tells you what is the importance, or historically and still today, of a tobacco tax collections. which creates another problem, because I always say that, products of nicotine has this addictive potential, but the tobacco money has even stronger addictive potential, because now governments are became already dependent on that money. Is very important how you help them navigate through the transition to the different to different products.
You were telling me you were just in China, Chinese New Year. Yeah. One of the very striking things right now is how differently they're looking at AI there from here, and how. And I'm curious. We were just talking about this a little backstage, but if you could share.
Yeah, it was shocking in a sense that so there was a week, I think last week before the Chinese New Year, and had a little bit of a free time, not much, but a little bit of free time. Went to a couple of the shopping malls or whatever, and I see they're running promotions on downloading AI apps. Like normally you run these promotions, buy the New Year's cookies, or I don't know, buy the 6-pack of Coke, or any consumer product. And I had never seen it here, right, in this part of the world. I said, wow, this is big, because if you think for a second that they will drive the adoption of AI at the person, at the individual level, right, which is a consumer, who is employee, and the adoption rate will be ahead of anybody else, other than obviously data, which you get now from use cases, how people are using this whole thing. But you're actually de-risking AI from the fact that the people may be afraid of using AI because things can go wrong. Because essentially allowing people to use it for a day-to-day basis, on a day-to-day basis. And I think I read it in a Semafor, that, different rates of adoption of AI at individual level. Forget, for example, companies, right? Because companies will do they will do their job in terms of a productivity, whatever other applications of a technology. But if you drive fast adoption of the technology at individual level, this is another accelerator how that technology is going to hopefully help. There are obviously some risks, right? But it's going to help everyone around. So if Chinese are doing this, I said, well, this is phenomenal. I wouldn't cross my mind to run the consumer type promo to download the app. But the net result of this whole thing is phenomenal. I also read, again in a Semafor, sorry, I'm quoting over twice Semafor. I think you will give me a cut on the subscription or whatever. But, I remember many of you remember the early days of the internet and e-commerce, and somebody asked you, could you give me your Visa card details? You will say, hold on a second, no bloody way, I give you my Visa card. And today you see people are downloading their health records to the AI apps. I mean, it's something which is so private and important to you. So, this is in a span of 20, 25 years. I said, that is fabulous. I know there are risks around this whole thing. But the more trust we build to the technology on an individual level, it's going to help everyone around. Because the same individual will change, obviously, or create an opportunities for new business models, and we see it. I mean, people are no longer going and searching the web for the product. They go to the AI. AI is facilitating this whole purchasing journey. The purchasing journey. They don't mind being handled by the AI agent. Transparency is very important, and actually, I think, they don't mind. They don't mind because they themselves using AI. So if I am using AI on my day-to-day routine for whatever task it is, it doesn't have to be a very complicated, you don't need to have a latest model of Claude or whatever, but the fact is that I know how to interact with a technology, I think is phenomenal. So I wish actually that, in other parts of the world, not just in China, that we also focus on that thing, let people adopt it faster. Okay? Because this helps a lot. Then I have employees coming to the office who will say, but hold on a second, why we cannot use the AI at the office? I am using this on a private basis and it helped me. Why I cannot do this there? Then is the role of the business managers, etc., how to redesign the companies, which essentially, especially for the large-size companies like ours, is another monumental challenge, which people underestimate the change management which has to happen at the corporate level in order to unleash the potential of this enormous technology. Because the companies, most of the companies, definitely ours, we are designed like this. We are designed vertical.
In our last, we've got a little more than a minute here. How are you? I mean, how, just in short, how do you push AI through a huge global company and all, with lots of businesses in lots of different places? Like, what's your strategy?
Look, I'm trying to be organized. Presumably there are people who are even more organized than me. My wife thinks that I am less organized than I should be. I think I am well organized. I start my day, I have, there are things which are crossing your mind. This is, the things which you want to focus, today, tomorrow, etc. And I'm trying to work with AI. And we have a management teams meeting, and I stop tolerating the fact that the people are telling me, sorry, I don't know. I have 5, 6, senior people meetings, and, oh, sorry, Jacek, we don't know. I will come back to you. I said, well, hold on a second. What's happened to your smartphone? You left it in the toilet? Or you have a smartphone? Just go, open your app, and tell me. So, you have to drive this whole thing.
So kind of a reign of terror from the top.
I mean, I'm not saying that... Look, I'm not saying this critical thinking is extremely important, okay? I will not tolerate that people tell me, listen, your question, the answer is, and the answer gave, I don't know, Chat or Claude or whoever. I said, listen, I don't know Claude. I don't care who the Claude is, okay? I am telling you, you are supposed to give me a smarter answer. And we as the team have to work it out. But knowledge today is like this. So when people tell me I don't know, well, I said it a few times. I said, what do you mean you don't know? I mean, you lost the phone.
I should use this tactic in interviews when people die. What are you talking about? Well, thank you so much for taking the time, Jacek.
Thank you.
Welcome Craig Dubitsky of Happy, Taddy Hall of Lippincott, and Mirabella Brocate El-Bazi of Semafor.
All right.
The clock.
Can we flip it over?
It still says 0, so we can start.
Let's go. Yeah.
Good morning, Taddy.
Good morning, Mirabella.
Well, it's so great to be here with all of you. And I think a common thread across the conversations we've heard within this track, but just across, I think, the whole event this week has just been how essential innovation is to meeting consumer demand. And I know a new CEO study from Oliver Wyman Forum has kind of shown that 65% of CEOs are really energized about the opportunity that disruption is presenting. We've certainly seen that in the media industry and at Semafor, but it's also something that we're seeing with partners around the world and across sectors. And so I'm just excited about this conversation because I'm joined by you, Taddy, who's been kind of pioneering a lot of the leading work and thinking on innovation, the jobs to be done theory has all kind of come from you. And Craig, you've put a lot of that strategy and kind of those frameworks into practice as a founder and a creator of many brands that I think many of us in this room have used yourself. And so I'm going to start with probably what everyone in the audience is asking themselves, which is what is in the bag?
He just got here from Target.
Yeah, I just got in from Target. By the way, thank you for the introduction. Patty, thank you for being a constant inspiration for me. And thank you for being here. Hi, I'm Craig. I'm a lifelong entrepreneur, and I brought some things just to show if anyone's ever seen Method. I was lucky enough to meet the founders when they were mixing product in their bathroom and led the original investment in Method. It was my lucky day. Anybody have lips in the audience? Anybody ever see EOS lip balm? I brought some stuff, by the way, if you guys want to share. Like
always selling. No,
just here you go. Yeah, sorry. Anyway, I have more.
We told him not to
share
do
afterwards.
that.
Sorry. Yeah, I made a shaving cream first. Anyone have? I don't want to get into private situations, but if you have, it's a women's shaving cream. But
Roll.
If you need a little,
oh Lord,
you're good. And then I started a brand called Hello. If anyone has teeth, yeah, you have some. Okay, good. Just to show you how natural it is and effective. I'm going to do something you should.
You promised you weren't going to do this.
Oh, my goodness.
Uncle. Anyway,
tastes like chicken.
It's great. We save marriages because the tubes keep their shape. Which is good. Maybe want some toothpaste. Anyway, come see me afterwards. And I started a new company.
I can't believe I invited you.
I know. I'm so sorry. Called Happy.
This was off script.
And I started a new company called Happy with Robert Downey Jr. And we make amazing coffee.
Stuck.
And I might have some toothpaste in my mouth. And we gave a piece of the company to NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness, because not everybody's happy. So come try some Happy. Here, have some Happy.
And
anyway,
tell us a little about the backstory around Happy and where that came from.
Well, really, truly, not everybody's happy. The thread for all these things, really, for me, is all around emotion. Function is fine, but in a world of AI and access to every bit of information possible, I feel like the scarcest thing now is authenticity, and I can't think of anything more authentic than feelings, basically. So as much as we're in the coffee business with Happy, I like to say we're in the happy business, and coffee is a delivery system, as you can see.
I'm happy.
So it's really around emotion and understanding this notion of emotional innovation. Because technical innovations are great, but if they don't make you feel anything, how really innovative are they? So anyway, yeah.
And so, Taddy, you wrote the book just around innovation, or really on innovation at Harvard with Clay Christensen. I imagine at Lippincott, you're advising kind of the Goliaths across all categories, the brands that are actually trying to stay ahead of the methods and ahead of the EOSs. Right. And so the approach that, Craig, you just walked through around kind of emotional innovation, does that hold true? Do you see that holding true across these kind of legacy organizations and that approach applying?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. Just to be clear, there really are two phenomena at work here, and one is established organizations or companies very understandably and logically pursuing their most valuable customers, seeking more efficient processes, driving for greater ROI, responding to competitive benchmarks. They naturally and logically converge on a narrower set of dimensions of benefit, and that just happens. But there's a second phenomena, which is really Craig lives, which is category creation. So that convergence of incumbents happens pretty much in every category. But the category creation, which is really about entrepreneurs and others asking kind of better, I don't say better questions, but different questions, which as we're moving upward, which is kind of an inexorable journey, are there customers who we're ignoring or not serving? Are there dimensions of experience or emotion, as Craig taps into, that maybe we're neglecting? And it's not just small companies that do it. It is an unnatural act, but we certainly have seen, I remember a number of years ago working with a team at Mountain Dew that stopped and paused when they saw young men on their way to work, going to a convenience store and getting a Mountain Dew and an orange juice and mixing it together. And instead of just dismissing that, they got curious. And long story short, that resulted in the Kickstart brand, which is multi-billion-dollar incremental revenue to their Mountain Dew carbonated soft drink business and their Rockstar Energy business. So it's really about, as you move upwards, also asking these two additional questions about, are there additional dimensions of benefit, and are there groups of customers that we're systematically neglecting?
Why does that work? Like, is there a structural kind of underpinning or foundational underpinning that kind of underlies all of this?
Clay had a great phrase that he used often, which is, when he was asked questions, which was, I don't have an opinion, but the theory does. And the really exciting thing about this work is, if you go back to the core theory of disruption, which Clay developed and published in Innovator's Dilemma 1997, the core phenomenon that makes disruption possible is what he identified as overshoot. That same phenomenon I just alluded to of incumbents adding incremental dimensions of benefit or performance along a trajectory that over time overshoots what the mainstream market is able to absorb or actually value. And that creates the opportunity for less expensive new entrants to come in with simpler products that many people are happy to have. And he wrote about it initially with disk drives, but we saw the same phenomena in automobiles, in steel manufacturing, and photocopiers, and on and on and on. So that was low market disruption. But that same phenomenon of overshoot, and this I think is the exciting work that we've been doing more recently, also creates this emotion gap or experience gap. And so you see innovators asking different kinds of questions. So if you look at Novo Nordisk, which was quite late to the diabetes treatment game, they didn't try and beat Lilly with a pure insulin. They asked, how can we make the experience of living with diabetes as simple and seamless and unobtrusive as possible? Sonos didn't try and make higher quality or higher performance audio systems than the established leaders. They decided, let's compete against this tangle of wires that clutters everything. That's a better thing to compete against, right? One of my favorite interviews in doing the book with Clay was Pleasant Rowland, who started American Girl Doll. She wasn't trying to make dolls. She was trying to facilitate experiences between moms and grandmothers and their kids. And so you see this over and over again of, usually it's incumbents, but asking different questions that open up apertures for innovation that others are missing. And it's all grounded in that same phenomenon of entrenched leaders overshooting the level of performance that the mainstream customers are willing to pay for.
And so you, Craig, have actually ended up working for or kind of working alongside and with a lot of those entrenched leaders. How have you seen them just generally react, I think, to your disruption within their spaces?
A couple of things. I love words and wordplay, and I love names and naming it because I have such a horrible name, Craig Dubitsky. So I'm a little thrown off by the word disruption. I think the idea is not to disrupt. The only people that ever call this disruptive with Happy or Method or EOS or Hello were the people being disrupted. No one ever said, hey, honey, I'm out of toothpaste. Next time, pick me up some of that disruptive Hello. They're such challengers. No one ever did that. So I think it's about, you end up being disruptive when you delight more. So I think, going back to the emotion part, figuring out if wires are a hassle, and I care about the music, but I want to get to it easily, Sonos. If I have diabetes and I want something that's going to live with my life much better, answer is right there. So it's this really intense focus on people. I'm allergic to the word consumer. We're people. We just happen to consume things. So if we can focus on where the joy could be, like this is an example, right? People get divorced. We're keeping love alive because we make a tube that doesn't get crinkled, right? This is how low the bar is. So, oral care, the extracted tooth was the global symbol of good oral care, right? Next time you're at the dentist, which, by the way, you're late for your appointment. Don't start flossing this week, by the way. They know. The extracted tooth was this global symbol, right? Like the pineapple is a global symbol for hospitality. It's an armed, barbed fruit. You need a hatchet, machete to get to the good stuff, right? So playing around with these things that we're all around, I think, has been a real treat. And working with large companies, by the way, the dirty little secret is every small company wishes they were a big company. Yeah. It's not David versus Goliath. It's how did David and Goliath work together? I don't know anybody at a big company who doesn't seem to admire the lack of legacy and layers that a small company has. I don't know anybody at a small company who says, let's stay tiny and never grow. Let's just make the smallest amount of people as happy as we can and make no money. So how you can play together within these systems, I think, is really important, and there's endless opportunity. So that's why I get so excited. People are like, why do you do this again and again? I'm like, I love people, and people write their narrative through their things. Let's give them better things. Whether that's aesthetically more pleasing, ethically more interesting, environmentally more pleasing, you name it. The bar, again, is pretty low. The opportunities are massive.
Well, saving marriages, David partnering with Goliath. Let's end on the happy note. That's all the time we have.
Well put.
Thank you both so much.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome Chris Britt of Chime, Everett Taylor of Kickstarter, and Liz Hoffman of Semafor.
Everett, Chris.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us.
Yes.
See, you coordinated your outfits today. Great work. Chris, let's start with you. Chime has been moving towards wealthier customers a bit, but your core customer was historically making, what, $50,000, $75,000 a year out of middle class. Can you give us a consumer gut check on that set right now, what you're seeing in account balances and spending?
Yeah, for sure, and thanks for having me. We really have a privileged position to be able to see the health of the consumer. We have about, in Q4, we announced 9.5 million monthly actives. The majority of them use Chime as their primary everyday bank account. So we offer bank accounts, FDIC insured, in partnership with some community banks that we partner with.
Chime is itself not a bank.
We're not a bank.
Right?
Yeah, we're a fintech, a technology company that sort of sits above that, creates the experience and designs the products and services in partnership with our banks. But we've been really effective in getting people to use Chime as their primary bank account. So our average customer does over 50 transactions per month with their Chime card, either their debit or Chime credit card, secured credit card. And we reported in Q4, again, that sort of similar to what the banks reported just in the last couple of days here, the consumer in America is resilient. We're seeing a nice mix of both non-discretionary and discretionary spend that's been up. We've seen savings account balances that are also up year over year. So overall, despite the macro volatility and geopolitical uncertainty, we see a very healthy consumer. We haven't seen any uptick in unemployment claims or anything.
Because you would see that come in.
Absolutely.
Unemployment check.
I mean, we saw it during COVID. We saw, when people fall into tough times, they tend to send, any support that they get from the government to their primary account, which for the majority of our customers is Chime. So
nothing on
the consumer is strong still today.
Overdraft protection, early wage access, those kinds of things?
Yeah, it's been tax refund season, so that's always the best time of the year for us in terms of deposit volume coming into the accounts. And people continue to use our early wage access, which allows our members to get access to their paycheck really on demand. At any point in time over the course of the pay cycle, they can get it for free if they wait 24 hours, or for a small fee, they can get it instantly. And it's really working. Our brand is becoming extremely well known. In fact, I was just telling you as I was walking in here, someone at the front desk was like, "You're actually the Chime guy," and he knew about us, and he signed up for an account as I walked by him.
Semafor World Economy as business development.
Yeah,
that's great. Oh. Can you see how they're spending their tax refunds?
Yeah, for sure. The tax refunds. like I said, a mix of discretionary and non-discretionary spend, still a healthy consumer spend activity. I'd say probably the biggest notable and probably not surprising stat that I could share is that from February to March, we saw spending on fuel up double-digit percentage month over month. So obviously the consumer's feeling a little bit of pressure in that area, but overall the consumer is still strong and generally remains, close to full employment here.
Everett, Kickstarter, obviously a platform where people fund creative endeavors. That is the definition of a discretionary purchase. How resilient is that sort of creative funding community right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's been really incredible. In 2025, we had our best year of all time by far, record-breaking numbers, revenue-wise, GMV-wise, users-wise. And so we're seeing this incredible uptick. And I think one of my hypotheses is about the economy in general. You have massive layoffs. People are finding alternative ways to go into entrepreneurship. The creator economy is exploding. And so we're seeing that, but also people are realizing that Kickstarter is more than just a crowdfunding platform. Many people use this for pre-order. Many entrepreneurs are using this to build audiences. And, Kickstarter isn't the place people are raising $10,000, $15,000. People are raising $20, $30, $40 million on our platform, selling products across different categories. And so I think it's been a place where a lot of people are now saying like, hey, there's millions of people using this app and this website every day. I want to tap into that. And also, this is an age of independence just due to the economy and people being forced into being a creator in entrepreneurship, or people just want to be independent now.
How much of this is, there's some embedded cultural backlash to AI that has people streaming towards, Etsy has leaned into this in some way. There's some sense of like the last true thing that a human being is doing. We want to gravitate towards that. Have you leaned into that marketing? Is that something that your creators are counting on?
Yeah, it's interesting because, we have such a big platform that we have people on both sides, right? We have people who are like, yay, AI, some of our biggest growth were with like AI-enabled tech products and physical products. But then on the other side with creatives, we have so many filmmakers, writers, filmmakers, music that are actually pretty anti-AI. And so, we're focused on making sure that we're serving both. We're one of the first major tech companies to come out with our own like pretty concrete AI policy to protect creative people. People have to say that they're actually using AI in their projects or their products, and if they're not, they're taken off the site. And so we're doing our best to protect creatives, but at the same time, we're trying to empower people who are using AI the tools to be able to be successful on the platform.
How do you police that? Have you found any bad actors, kicked them off the platform?
Yeah, I mean, we have different software, external and internal built software to be able to track and see those things, but it's not something that's foolproof, right? Like you can't catch everything, but I think we catch a great deal. And then also our community is on it. Like when they see something AI that has not been flagged, they will absolutely let us know on social media, in our DMs, everywhere.
So you're crowdfunding the projects and some of the enforcement.
Yes, for sure.
User generated.
Yeah.
Chris, we had the CEO of Fifth Third, Tim Spence, the big super regional banks here the other day, talking about financial deregulation. And he said, from the banking perspective, he said, be careful what you wish for. That banks may be getting quite a bit of what they want on capital relief and other things, mergers, but that deregulation is very good for fintechs and crypto too. Should the banks be afraid of you?
Well, for the last 2 quarters, J.D. Power reported that Chime opened up more bank accounts than any institution in America, almost second only to...
So yes.
So I would say maybe yes. Not to be cocky, we like to think that we're adding a healthy dose of competition in an industry that is increasingly consolidated among a very small number of banks that sort of rule the market, if you will. So, I'm really proud of the innovation that we've created, and there's no question it's a sort of lighter touch regulatory environment. But, one of the core values that we have as a company is to respect the rules. We operate in a highly regulated space. This isn't, you can't just vibe code a bank account. You actually have to be integrated with banks and the regulatory regime and compliance and all these sorts of things. So we take all that very seriously. We don't, skirt the rules. And I like to think, I'm confident in saying that we are a good actor, and we'll certainly focus on designing great consumer products that are always compliant.
But a lot of the fintechs of your generation launched kind of staunchly anti-bank. And then a lot of them ended up getting a bank charter or buying a bank. And there was a point where they wanted to do things that would require them, particularly to lend and have a balance sheet. And in fact, we had PayPal's CEO on this stage last year, asked him whether they'd ever become a bank. He said, that's not the plan. And then they went and did it. So just to throw down a marker, what plans, is there ever a point where Chime it can't continue to be reliant on these community bank partners that operate mostly in the background and actually goes whole hog itself?
I mean, the bank partnership model has worked extremely well for us over the years. We've created a great set of consumer products, and our bank partners have really benefited from the deposits that we bring to them that they otherwise wouldn't be able to acquire at the scale that we bring to them. Every year, we always reevaluate the opportunity to potentially pursue a bank charter. Obviously, the market is more open, more receptive to that these days. So we don't have any announcement on that front, but it's something that we continue to look at. And I won't put a line in the sand, definitively on one side or the other. But it's always an option for us.
But Treasury has clearly said
and certainly more so than ever right now.
They want more banks. They want de novo charters. If you were to, if I can just trap you a little bit, if you were to think about that, is acquiring a bank the right way to go? A full national charter? We've seen a lot of these sort of slimmed down state licenses in Utah and some other places. Like what product would you be looking to offer that you don't today that a license might be helpful for?
Well, honestly, that's part of the calculation for why we haven't pursued a bank charter before, because we didn't feel like there was any product that we wanted to do that we weren't able to do because of our non-bank status. Look, we are getting a little bit more into credit extension and lending. It's a sort of different type. It's very short-term in nature with extremely manageable loss rates. We announced last quarter our MyPay earned wage access product got to a 1% loss rate, which I think is among industry leading and the lowest cost product in the market. So, if we were to ever pursue a bank charter, either de novo or an acquisition, it would probably be mostly driven by the fact that we are becoming a larger player in credit extension and lending, and that would help us with cost of capital and the ability to roll out products at an even faster clip. But again, it's not something that we're about to announce, but something that we are always evaluating.
Got it. Everett, Kickstarter launched in 2009.
Yes.
The creator economy was not a thing then, or a glimmer in the eye then. Obviously, it had a big push from layoffs from the recession and then the rise of social media platforms. But since then, we have Substack, we have Patreon, the sort of 800-pound gorilla that is YouTube. What is your moat in that world?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I always love to see competitors fail when they try to upstart. It's our audience. It's genuinely our audience. We have millions of people this is a unique audience of people that are doing e-commerce in a different way, right? Where they know that, hey, they might not get the product tomorrow like on Amazon. They might get it, a month from now, 2 months from now, 3 months from now. And so it's a very unique audience of people that are early adopters, first adopters, people that have very, very niche interests, whether it's comic books or games or films or tech products. And so I think the audience that we've been able to develop and all of the tooling, since I got there, one of my missions was to build out from pre-launch to post-campaign, building out all the tools that a creator would need throughout a creator's journey. And our most successful creators are repeat creators because they want to continue to tap into that audience. They develop audiences of tens of thousands of people where they don't have to worry about the social media algorithms. If you build 50,000 followers on Instagram, maybe 50 people, 100 people see your posts, no offense. And then, or if you do that on Kickstarter and you launch something new or whatever, all 50,000 of those people get notified, right? And so it's become such a strong platform in the toolkit of creators to be like, hey, when I'm launching something or I'm doing something new, I want to go to Kickstarter as well. And I have all the tools there to be successful.
But if YouTube decided tomorrow that maybe in a bid to share less of their ad revenue with their creators, they were going to launch a fundraising channel or some kind of more commercial channel, which they've actually stayed away from despite having a huge audience. Wouldn't that put you out of business pretty quickly?
Don't give Neil any ideas, right?
Neil is a Semafor
Neil's a nice
reader.
guy. Neil.
We've established
No. No, I don't, listen, I don't think it's just that easy, right? Like, we've built this brand and reputation. We've built out this flow. I've talked to other big CEOs who have like tinkered and thought about it, and they realize that we have a very special moat in this space. And I think it's something that, we're growing. I mean, we had our best year of all time last year by far. We're already up 52% over last year, right? And every year I've been CEO, we've been growing steadily fast. And like Kickstarter has become that place. And I don't think it's just easy for anyone to step into our space. I won't let it happen either.
Chris, do you plug into the creator economy in any way? Do you have a sense of how many Chime users are sort of non-traditionally employed in interesting ways?
I mean, there's a lot of what we call like solopreneurs, people that have very small businesses that use the Chime platform for sure. And we see a lot of people that are gig workers, people that have multiple sources of income. I think that's definitely a huge trend that I think we're seeing across the country for sure, is that there's just more ways for individuals to earn money than ever. And I think a lot of people are, that traditional, like, have one job and that's the only place that you're going to get paid from is definitely, I think, becoming like sort of out of favor relative to the way that the regular sort of mainstream America actually lives. And we certainly see that.
How many jobs have you had in your career?
Oh man, maybe 5, 6. Yeah.
Everett?
Oh man. 6 or 7, 8, I don't know. What counts? Does, working at the shoe store? I don't know. But yes, I've had quite a few.
I did Baskin Robbins. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good. Retail is just good. It builds character.
It had its perks.
Yeah, sure. Shifting gears a little bit, we're in Washington. The administration has done a lot of interesting things in financial services. The biggest one right now, I think, is the Trump accounts and sort of how they're trying to think about retirement. Sort of curious quickly for Chris, is there anywhere for Chime to play in that world?
We've been huge supporters of Trump accounts. Obviously, compounding interest is like the eighth wonder of the world, and the sooner you can get someone invested in the growth of our country, the better off we all are. I've been a supporter of Invest America and been on the CEO Council with Brad Gerstner for many years now, so was thrilled to see the launch of this. We've already seen over 100,000 Chime members already have applied for Trump accounts.
Can they do that through their Chime app?
Well, they can you can start the process through your tax prep form. There's actually a specific form that you can apply. If you have a kid that's less than 2 years old, I think you can actually apply for the credit and sort of kick that off in your tax refund process, or you can go directly to trumpaccount.gov. And we've seen over 100,000 people that have signed up. So we're thrilled about the opportunity. We're going to support it. And I think it's really impressive what Treasury and the administration have done on this front.
But do you have or do you need a brokerage business to actually participate in the plan?
It's funny you asked. We are about to launch an investment service that's going to combine both robo-investing as well as individual stocks, and we'll also have Trump accounts as well. Of course, what was announced recently is that BNY is going to be the agent of these accounts, and there's sort of a white label app that's going to be created by Robinhood out of the gate. That not a Robinhood branded app is our understanding, but really like a Trump account one. And the signals that we get is that consumers will be able to transfer those Trump accounts over to a Fidelity, a Schwab, or Chime investing app at some point into the future. Okay. So we're prepping for that.
As you launch you said single stock investing apps, like, what do you make of the kind of gamification of investing and bleeding obviously into prediction markets? Like, do you want people on Chime? Do you want people to go on Chime and think about it as their primary bank account and they're managing their household finances, or do you want them to be able to hit buy on something?
We think that being, so many of our members are getting their recurring direct deposit into a Chime account, and that's really the moment of truth where you make decisions on, am I going to pay off my high interest debt? Am I going to pay a bill? Am I going to put money into savings, or am I going to invest? So we think we're in this really critical point of our members' financial life, and it's natural for us to play a role in moving that money into an investment account. We don't want to be overly paternalistic around how they should invest. We're not going to start, like a default to trading, 2027 call options or something like that. But if that's the way that someone wants to invest, we don't have an issue with that either. But we'd probably be more of a default into, low-cost ETFs and that sort of thing.
Okay. And then, Everett, in the time we have left, On the Trump accounts and the retirement, there's a question of how that's going to filter into the gig economy, and those are your creators. Is there a place for you to be a distribution channel for that? Are you an advocate? How do you think about that?
I'm really big on focus. One of the things that we've been focused on is we have a unique value in the creator economy and in the gig economy, and we have so much more room to grow. I can't wait for you all to see all the innovations that we're bringing. I'm not thinking about Kickstarter as a crowdfunding company anymore. I'm thinking of it as a creator company, and so we're really focused on the things that we do well, and I'm supportive of all those things as well, but we're very focused on our roadmap.
That is all the time we have. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome Orlando Bravo of Thoma Bravo, who joins Liz Hoffman on stage.
Hi, Orlando.
Liz, how are you?
Fantastic. So Thoma Bravo, private equity firm you run, is probably the largest owner of enterprise software companies in the world right now. It's a bit of a dirty word in the markets, with AI threatening to let corporate buyers vibe code their own stuff and stop buying all of your portfolios companies. Is software investable right now?
Oh, big time. This is the time to do it.
You heard it here?
Would you rather buy a great software company when they were trading at 15 times revenue or when they're trading at 10 times EBITDA? I remember back when we started in 2000, they're the most incredible buying opportunities right now in the market. You just need to know what you're looking at and what you're buying. One of the things that one of my partners says, which I think he says it perfectly, this is exactly the wrong time to be buying a mediocre software company at a bargain price. But if we stick to what we do really, really well, which is number one, buy the highest quality company in the space, usually the number one leader in a segment of cyber, in a segment of process, in a segment of functions, the number one player. Two, that has existing management, people that deeply know that domain. And third, companies that are showing big momentum in AI acceleration. Now you can see it because it's been a while. If we can get those three at these bargain prices, we are huge, huge buyers of these companies right now.
So what are you working on?
A lot, but it's so selective, and we have the benefit of 25 years of history of having our feet on the ground on this stuff. And if I can give you 1 minute on it, when we started in 2000, nobody wanted to touch software. Run away from it as fast as you can, people were telling us, because there were two issues that really sound familiar today. One is there's too much tech risk. Right now, the tech risk is, of course, AI. Second, Microsoft was going to put all these independent software vendors out of business, right? They were going to consolidate it all. How could you compete with Microsoft? How can we compete with Anthropic and OpenAI right now? What we did as a group is we listened to that, and we were nervous, but we did the detailed work. We would go to every software company, spend nights looking at their files of renewals, go to all their customers, see how they're using their systems. And what we found out, and I think this is really what investors are missing, is what these companies are truly about. In every single area of the economy, of corporations, you have companies that accumulate the entire knowledge of how the right way to do business gets done in that area. What is the best way to source? What is the best way to do payroll? What is the best way to run distribution, manufacturing? And that knowledge of all the players accumulates in just 2 to 3 companies per space. Those 2 to 3 companies in every area have this level of domain expertise that cannot be copied, cannot be replicated. And those players today are more valuable than ever. And one last thing is they hold the keys to AI adoption in their customers because they know that domain so well. So we are very, very bullish on that, and we're seeing that in our portfolio. If we look at our last fund, our companies are booming right now.
Why would a CEO of a public software company sell to you at these prices?
Because nobody likes them in the public market. It's got to be super depressing to put up great earnings and have all these same questions from people that sell your stock every day, that criticize you, that make stories about you. This is the time to knuckle down, bear down, do the detailed work, build the best products you can. You have to be very open-minded, though, because there's a lot of stuff happening around you. If you don't capture the AI opportunity, you're going to fall behind. Maybe there are new ways to do a process that didn't exist in the last 40 years, and you have to be open-minded to grab that as well versus a newcomer in the market.
That's easier to do as a privately held company than a public one.
1,000%. And you can go long-term on it. You can really make long-term choices of how you're going to be investing to once again capture what it is, the labor reduction that your AI products are going to be providing their customers.
You borrow money to buy the companies that you buy, and the lenders, the marks that they have on these loans suggest that the equity that you own is deeply impaired. So I'm curious how you're thinking about marks on your books when you look at the public competitor set, and also what your creditors are sort of implying about what your business is worth.
Yeah, it's a very good question, because if a loan trades at 80 cents, doesn't mean the equity is zero. It just means, wait a minute, that company is not performing as well right now. The risk has gone up. So instead of me requiring a spread over SOFR of 350 basis points, which was so low at the peak of the market for private credit, now I may require a spread of 650 basis points. Give me a 10% return to buy into this loan. I think that's very reasonable, while the equity could still have quite a bit of value. Now, this is a point of debate, okay? AI will disrupt many, many software companies. Those companies that AI will disrupt were going to be disrupted anyway, but it'll happen a lot faster. There are some, like the domain leaders, the franchise value domain investing that we do, that we feel very good about because they hold a very special place in the enterprise and have a big opportunity with AI. They're the ones that are in the pole position, but they still need to do some work. The reason why I'm getting to this is, as a lender, those 5% growers in software that are not doing that much, those are a lot riskier today than they were a year ago. Much more risky. You cannot just count on that stable cash flow like before, both the equity and the debt. Now, the companies that are really well positioned are going like this. And the lenders don't get that benefit because they're stuck with a given interest rate.
I want to talk about AI winners and losers in a second, but just to put a fine point on it, have you marked down your investments as the public peer set has declined?
Oh, of course. Okay. Of course. We mark to market every quarter. And one of the things that happened too in the public comps that you got to realize, can you believe that today still the average software as a service company loses money? Today, there's been no improvement in the last 25 years in the profitability of the software space in the public markets. So one of the big downdrafts really happened to the money-losing companies that went from 15 times revenue to 4. Now, the profitable comps have gone from about 22 times forward EBITDA to 16. So it's not like it's this incredibly material change, but you have to bring them down as you see the public comps.
What specifically distinguishes, do you think, a legacy software business that will survive the AI wipeout from one that won't? What are you looking for?
Leadership. Look, there are two key areas. One is, what is your company about? If you once again operate in a very, very deep domain where you're running the transactions of your customer, and that domain is very difficult to understand.
What's an example of that?
Okay, I'll give you, it's kind of what we buy. Jeppesen that we bought from Boeing. You cannot fly a plane, commercial, private, military, without the Jeppesen system. It knows where every plane is in the sky, what the distance is from one another, route planning, flight planning, everything. You cannot do that now. When you talk to that team, they know that domain cold. They know what the traffic controllers need. They're providing new AI solutions to the airlines. They're doing context graphs, so way beyond what a generalist infrastructure provider can do. That's a deep domain. Now, analyzing legal documents, is that a deep domain? No. I mean, somebody from Stanford can tell you, yeah, you shouldn't, if you work at a law firm, somebody has written a memo about labor law in the same subject for the last 30 years. Let's collect that information and kind of put it together a lot more quickly. That doesn't have that kind of moat and that advantage. Now, if you take the good side of that, which are these deep domain experts, I have so much respect for that 40 years of history in a space, knowing how things worked, how things didn't work, and you put that back in your product. What are the best ways of doing things? You learn from a customer, you learn from another, you made a mistake. And that accumulates over time, and it's so, so valuable. Now, if you take the good side of that, there are two risks. One is that somebody younger, newer, with a more open mind, discovers a better way of doing it. So you have to be open-minded and move quickly. But there's a second risk of hyper-competition now in software. Coding tools. Our companies are accepting now 40% of the machine-generated code. That's going to go to
40%.
40%. That's going to go to 50. That's going to go to 100. Is that existential? No, because you cannot vibe code a domain. But what it is what you worry about is that your competitors will innovate a lot faster than you if they adopt these tools and these development methodologies and therefore start chipping away at your market and at your moat. So those are the risks that you really have to watch out for. And what is it about? Super leadership. Existing management that knows the space, that is open-minded, and that's willing to move, to push forward.
You know, when you were starting investing, we were moving from the sort of license management way that software is distributed to SaaS. Some of the old legacy companies survived and pivoted. Adobe is probably a good example. But when you think about the pivot now from enterprise, from SaaS to AI, are you betting on AI native companies that were built right on top of these models? Actually, legal services is a good example. A few of them that say, we're just going to pretend we were a law firm today. How would we use AI? Do you make a distinction between SaaS companies trying to pivot and newer entrants that are AI native?
I think both of them are going to win. Just like happened in SaaS, we transitioned many of our licensed companies to SaaS, and also new ones were created during that time, which we ended up buying and did well. We actually did better during the SaaS phase, where the risk was that Amazon was going to take all the value of a software company. That was the risk, and we doubled down on our strategy then. Before it was tech risk and Microsoft, then it was Amazon, now it's AI risk, and maybe these incredible model builders that are going to take that. But I think you'll see winners in both. There'll be newly created great AI companies that maybe we'll buy, but right now it's too early for us because it's not really well established yet. You don't know what their business model is yet. You don't know how they're going to make money. You don't know the cost of inferencing. You don't know what the customer is willing to pay. And more importantly, there's a lot of interest right now in corporations about their AI strategy, but the ROI hasn't gotten there yet. They're not really making a lot of money from adopting these tools right now.
Thoma Bravo has a lot of young analysts who are making PowerPoints and spreadsheets. Are they all using AI behind your back? Or how do you think about automating some of that lower level work? And what can you automate away? But what do you still need them to kind of learn how to do or sort of just tough through?
I think private equity is a beautiful example of the talent of young people. I am not a believer at all that corporations should fire or not hire this junior talent.
What's your headcount today?
200 people, almost 200 billion.
What is it in 5 years, do you think? Assets under management and headcount.
We run with a really lean team because we like to give people a lot of responsibility, authority, and have them see the whole thing. When you see these big corporate reductions now, I don't know how some of our peers have 2,000 people. I really don't. I mean, if you're doing your job, but we have to get the money, get the deal, improve the deal, and stay focused on that. And we don't need this incredible headcount if now we become internally oriented instead of externally oriented. Look, it's been a bit of a transition because at first, our young analysts that pride themselves on building great models and doing great analytics, now you can really shorten that. And you have to coach them to actually do much bigger things. Try learning a new space. What's going on in AI in your domain? Have you called all these 10 companies? Have you developed a relationship with the CEOs of these companies? How are you thinking a little bit differently than 99% of the people in private equity? Not 180 degrees, but a little bit. Enough to really create alpha. And kind of we're in that process. There was somewhere I read that somebody said, well, given co-work and these great tools that can build models, do comps, I do them at night very quickly and getting the information instead of bothering people in the middle of the night. Do we need associates anymore? I read that. And I'm like, I guess you don't if you want to have a company in 30 years. Those are our future leaders 30 years from now, and it's an apprenticeship business.
You really want your 23-year-olds out there calling software company CEOs?
100%. And think about it. Who's running these new AI companies? They're their roommates.
All 23-year-olds now, right?
I was like, literally, he's the roommate of our associates. So go for it. Now it's your time.
Got a little time left. I want to talk about cyber. Treasury Secretary Besson had a bunch of big bank CEOs in last week talking sort of about mythos. But the undercurrent there is that AI is going to turbocharge cyber risks and that we are not prepared for it in a bunch of places. Mostly been on the hardware side, the focus in venture and defense tech, but what are you seeing on the software side?
It's going to be a mess. If you put our companies together, we're the second largest cybersecurity company in the world. And we have the number one players in email, identity, identity governance, and I can go through spaces. Think about this problem. If agents are going to be 1,000 times the number of humans doing stuff in the enterprise, how do you tell what the identity of the agent is? Who asked them to do something, what data they're allowed to see, what data they're allowed to change? It is an enormous mess. And it's moving so quickly that this is actually a barrier to AI adoption for the enterprise. So one of the things in the stock market is when you see cyber stocks go down due to these threats, yeah, there could be a couple of areas where models can do that better. But overall, the cybersecurity industry is going to get a big boom from this new development.
On that cheery note, we are out of time. Thank you so much, Orlando.
Thank you.
Please welcome George Petrakailos of Cataleo Capital Management, Charles Phillips of Recognize, and Prashant Rao of Semafor.
Charles, George, thank you for making the time. Looking forward to this conversation. Thank you, everyone, for joining us at Semafor World Economy today. Let's sort of dig right into sort of the big two themes that I want to talk about today, which is kind of the changing world of geopolitics, trade, all that kind of thing, and also, frankly, spend a bit more time talking about artificial intelligence, both kind of the opportunities, but also the constraints that you're facing from your perspectives. Let's start with the geopolitical risk.
the past 6 years, trade wars, real wars, pandemics, et cetera. I'm curious how, from your various points of view, that affects investment choices, financing environments, that kind of thing. Charles, why don't you start? I mean, walk me through, like, in this past 6-7 years, how has the sort of world changed?
I guess we run a fund, about a $3 billion fund, 2 funds now, investing in AI and tech services. And so the main impact was more the Ukraine war for us because we own the company, or we're still on a company in Ukraine. Kyiv. Ukraine is known for having great software engineers, and so we hire a lot of engineers around the world, so that's why we invested. And at the time, there were about 3,000 engineers there, and about a year later, when the war broke out, obviously, we tried to get some people out. Frank D'Souza, if he's in the room, is my partner. He's over there. He's the chairman of the company. And Frank personally was flew to London, directing, kind of evicting people, or evacuating people, rather, from Kyiv as much as we could. But no one actually believed the Russians were going to invade, so we couldn't get a lot of people to leave. We had the last private plane leaving Kyiv, getting people out, and it was half empty because people didn't think it was going to happen. And then it did, then they couldn't leave. And so to our surprise, though, they've been extremely resilient, working wherever they can find an internet connection. Initially, clients were a little reserved, not wanting to send work over there, but that's kind of gone away now because this has gone on for a while and people believe it's going to work out somehow. And company's growing again and profitable, and so you work around things, and Frank and team did a great job doing that.
And George, you were talking backstage about like the past sort of 5-6 years, that's just one example, but this increased volatility is like a real kind of issue.
Yeah, so we don't have a company in Ukraine or Iran, which is probably good during this crazy times, but I think volatility has been a problem for the following reason. 2020, 21, we invest in innovative healthcare, we invest in biotech, we invest in health tech, we invest in medtech. A lot of people paid and invested in companies that, they overpaid and everything was like that back then. Since then, LPs, as we're looking to grow the business and raise more funds, which is what we do in venture and privates, are very careful to do so because they haven't received any cash back. So DPI became a term, distributed versus paid in capital, that is more important than IRR, at least on the private side. And volatility doesn't really help that because there's 2 ways, as you guys all know, that we get private funds money back. One is through M&A, and that has been going really well on the healthcare and big pharma side, but also through IPOs. And we were joking earlier before we walked up on the stage about how the last year we have 6, 7, I think 8 portfolio companies ready to go public. And we're trying to time the market. We're trying to time what is happening every week, every day, every moment, every tweet. And it's just hard on at least the public market side of things.
I can imagine. And then just staying with you, George, again, the kind of interesting thing in the biotech space is kind of distributed geography of research now.
Yeah.
And a generation or 2 previously, I imagine there were fewer places where kind of cutting edge research was happening. Now, China is such a player, and if you could talk us through how that's changing too.
Yeah, when we started the business, the idea was, that was 2020, so we're 6 years old as a firm, so not that old. The focus was almost exclusively the United States, with some labs at Cambridge, Oxford, MIT, Max Planck in Germany, or an institute or 2 in France. I think Asia today is one of the places that we don't figure out ASAP, we as a firm will become irrelevant. I think from the biotech side, basic research side, all the way to healthcare AI, we do the whole spectrum. China is really moving along really, really fast with many more options, many more cheaper options. And if we don't figure that out, again, right away, we will become irrelevant. So I think right now we're hiring massively to build full-time teams in Asia, whether that is Singapore and Hong Kong, but also Shanghai and Hongzhou and so on and so forth. Our team has been there multiple times just this year. And when we go there, you don't just see the local community like 2-3 years ago, but you see the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the world, from Pfizer to AstraZeneca in Europe, having massive operations that mirror those of the United States and Europe, which wasn't the case in 2020 when we launched. So big focus on Asia, specifically in China. And you cannot do that by just managing a fund in New York and knowing what happens there. You got to have the local buy-in, you have the local community and local teammates. So that's what we're doing.
That's fascinating. Now, I want to sort of artfully pivot to talking about artificial intelligence. We were talking, about talent there. One of the sort of things we did talk about was this kind of question of like, what are the constraints on wide-scale rollout of AI? And I feel like it comes across as like technical and human constraints in those kind of two ways. I mean, Charles, can you walk us through those two facets and how they kind of interact in your experience?
Sure. I would say initial adoptions by individuals and consumers, everybody's excited by it. So it's about 800 million weekly users now, which, but the problem is few people are paying for that. So about 6% have a subscription. So anytime something's free, people use a lot of it, and that's what's happening right now. So the model companies are having to put throttle and rate limits on the free usage, and you see some outages and some caps. So and they have to figure out a business model on the consumer side. It might just be marketing. You want them to know about it, so on the enterprise side of it, that's where you generate your real revenue. But for right now, there's a lot of people using it and not paying. I would say the other constraints are for the enterprise is just identifying the use cases. When we first got started on this, everybody's excited on a number of boards. And so you just ask employees for use cases, and hundreds will come up, and then you sort through them all, and you realize that most of these don't produce an ROI. Some of them don't even need AI. Some of them are bad ideas. And so what's more current now is kind of combining a top-down with the bottoms-up. There should be some strategic things that management understands where the costs are, where the opportunities are. Let's have a top-down process and bottoms-up and figure out what are the 4 or 5 use cases we want to go after instead of 500 of them. That process is still underway. And then there's a data problem. So most companies, large enterprises, have data everywhere. It's not in a consistent format. And you have to fix that problem somehow to get the advantages of AI. And it used to be the worst job in a company was being the archivist, archiving old data. Nobody cared about it. Now that guy's pretty popular. And so we're trying to get that back. And then you have to build some sort of knowledge graph on top of the data so it's consistent. That actually makes it easier for the model to use it if it can understand the data faster. So all these things are work in process. The context windows are bigger now, which means people are submitting more complex queries and running longer. So the token costs, the unit costs are going down, but the aggregate costs are going up. And companies don't like when something's unpredictable on cost. If you don't know if it's going to be X or 10X, it's hard to plan like that. So that they're trying to figure out how to manage that process as well.
Yeah. So we're talking about the sort of compute constraint first. George, I mean, this is like a real problem when you're talking about potential companies to invest in. Getting access to this is really difficult for them.
Exactly, and a lot of people, even experts in the space, and that applies more to the healthcare AI side of things, this kind of snuck up on them as an issue. I was at Caltech 2 weeks ago talking to potential companies for us to help start and fund, and there's several entrepreneurs that are experts in AI and didn't think of that being an issue, and they have created a great pitch, have raised money, have built teams, 40, 50, 60, 100 people, but now they're saying, oh gosh, how do I get access to compute? What do I do? Who do we know at NVIDIA? Who do we know at AMD? Who do we know even at Caltech to help us get access to it? So I see this becoming week by week a bigger issue. And I think this is something that every CEO should be interested in figuring out before they start the company or as they are starting their company, not after, because some of them are in a bad position today.
And from both of your perspectives, I mean, to your point, you can't force companies not to use it. You want to encourage them to use it. How do you balance sort of a sense of, I don't know, guiding them and helping sort of the sense of giving them access? Charles, like, you can't enforce them and say, no, you got to stop now. How are you finding that they're dealing with this lack of compute and these ballooning costs?
Well, if it's cost, it's like any other business cost. You have to budget for it and give people, here's your budget, you can use it. I can't tell you what queries to use, but don't go over X. And then what we've done internally, where we started at X, we're now probably at 5X monthly, what we used to be at. But we make that decision.
That's 5X over what time frame?
That happened over a course of probably 9 months.
9 months?
9 months. It went up, that cost, that went up. But we made the decision that we think it's delivering productivity, it's saving time in other places. It's a good thing for the people that work here to get used to it. And for now, we'll let it run and see what happens.
Does that tally with your experience, like cost rising 5X in 9 months?
Yeah. that's why I said it's a next week problem, not next year or next 5 years problem. So, or last week's problem, actually.
I mean, do you see any sense that this is going to improve in the sort of shorter, medium term, or for the moment you are having to tell your kind of portfolio companies and potential like sort of investments this is going to be a problem?
I think yes or no. So in the short term, I think we follow the same playbook as Charles. You got to have constraints, you got to have budget controls, and that's the most you can do by being a board member. We're not running the company ourselves, and we don't want to do that. I think in the medium term there will be more access.
And then let's talk about the other constraint that you kind of alluded to, which is the sort of human talent kind of question, both the availability of talent, the retraining of talent, all this kind of thing. George, backstage you did talk about there's this kind of strange like supply-demand imbalance for like positions that were like the archivist, previously not the most glamorous things that are suddenly hugely in demand. I'm curious if you could talk this through in the biotech space.
Maybe I start. Yeah, I think we're facing that now. We were talking about at a firm like ours that started in 2020 with a focus on life sciences, big time. The coolest people to talk to were those with an MD, a PhD, or both. And having the experience of being in the clinic for 10 years or being in the lab for 10 years was kind of mandatory to be able to select compounds and assets. The less sexy category was those guys doing health tech and Medicare, Medicaid, and digital therapeutics. Nobody really cared about those people as much as the MDs or the PhDs. I hope I'm not offending anybody in the room, but things turned again, and now with companies like Open Evidence and Abridge and Hippocratic and Doctronic, these people, like the archivist example that Charles gave, are the guys that we're looking to hire, that we're looking to promote, that we're looking to expand and have more of, and there's scarcity.
And Charles, you were also talking about within companies, just like getting people to use it to sort of train and like be comfortable is also its own issue.
Yeah, for our portfolio, we have a lot of software engineers, so about 10,000 people in total across the companies, and a big percentage of them build software for other companies, kind of contract development. And so the challenge there, of course, is to shift them from being pure software developers to systems engineers, to use these tools to generate more code, but be a systems engineer to put the system together, the testing, the integration, coordinate the project, and make sure you're building the right thing, talking to the end users. That's a different skill set than just typing in code. So they're shifting. You can retrain people. We're seeing people migrate, but it's not total. You still need software developers who understand how the systems work. You can't ask a software engineer to maintain a system he didn't build, didn't know anything about. And so what we're seeing is the amount of code per software engineer is going up, but we're producing a lot more code. And so we had this fall off in software engineer hiring in 23 when everybody overhired in COVID and all that. And now it's starting to come back because if you generate that kind of code, somebody's going to have to maintain it. So someone just said the other day, the banks on Wall Street have generated more tech debt in the last 6 months than the last 10 years. Everybody went crazy generating code, and somebody's got to maintain all this. And so now they're bringing back some software engineers. So it may go in cycles, but the amount of code you can support per engineer is going to go way up.
And so how are your companies kind of dealing with this question of helping these people make that transition? I mean, not just in the United States, but around the world, we don't have a great history of retraining. Yeah. And particularly as people get deeper into their careers, well, what is the approach that's being taken?
Most of our companies have built small academies or guilds, depending on which company, what they call it. But it's a retraining process because you work on a project, they're going on the bench for 3 months anyway, waiting for the next project, then you get retrained, get new skilling. So that is a key part of running a tech company, is reskilling your people constantly, because we're used to that, because languages change all the time, new technologies came out, new containers, there's always something changing. And so having a process where people can learn new things is actually how you retain people.
And then also, sorry. Go ahead.
I was about to say that this also applies, and I think this is what you're about to ask, I think it also applies in our own companies as well, right. Not only the portfolio companies that we invest in. And I think, I think it's important to address that, because a lot of people are going out to pitch investing in AI in different sectors, but in their own company, they're not adopting any of it. So this is something to watch out for if you're investing in funds. But also internally, talking about training, we are doing that. We're organizing training sessions so we can try and beat the past and have the right training available to all of our existing teams by enhancing the team, by adding more data scientists and more people, more engineers, and more people that really understand from how to use basic Claude, which is now mandatory in our firm. We have a license for every single person. We're 50 of us. And all the way to creating our own proprietary AI-enabled systems for what we do in asset selection and picking targets and helping pick the best risk-adjusted return investments. And on the initial part of it, of course, it's very human-augmented, but we have those systems in place, and we're working to make them better every day.
And Charles, you guys are also doing internal stuff in terms of just like cleaning up to get ready to like be more able, right?
Yeah, we have 2 big projects underway. The first is just aggregating our internal data in one place so we can all share it. And we're using a platform called Metal.ai, but basically it ingests data from Box, from news sources, from anywhere, Zoom calls, and tags it to a company or a theme. And so your profile of a company should be changing every day. It can scrape the web every 6 minutes. And so you should have a profile of a company that is never static. It's changing and growing day by day as you get more information. So that's one project. The other one is that we're building a digital operating partner. And what that means is we want our companies to instrument all of their internal system with agents, whether it's HR, finance, resource management, CRM. And then if those systems change as transactions come in, we should be getting real-time updates either on the dashboard or alerting so we can see if someone was hired, if they lost a key client, if there's too much attrition and turnover. I don't want to wait a month later to see a report and be told that in a board meeting. I should be seeing that weekly or daily. And so we're building that now. One of our companies is building that, and then we're going to roll that out across the rest of the portfolio. And companies just have to get used to that kind of transparency. Soon we'll get to the point where I don't need your monthly report. I can see what's going on myself. We can choose to have a conversation, whatever it needs to be.
Are you facing resistance to that?
I think people weren't expecting it when we did it. It was like, oh, this is different, this level of transparency. I said, well, look, if it's something that you don't want me to see, that's the one thing I want to see. So let's just agree that that's the way it's going to work in our portfolio.
The other thing, we're talking about like the sort of technical constraints on human retraining and stuff, but there's a sort of deeper pipeline of building the talent that's necessary for this new world, both in biotech and sort of software and stuff. And I'm curious, kind of the broader, not just here, but in parts of Europe and in many other economies around the world, there's this sense of like attacks on like defunding universities in Europe and the United States. So this is the pipeline of STEM and like technical talent. Do you worry about this longer term sort of talent pipeline and how it's going to come through, both through immigration, but also through domestic education?
I have to start, yeah. Of course we do. A lot of the companies that we've invested in, a lot of the people that we have, that we employ and back have benefited from NIH funding and all this stuff that unfortunately was cut last year or a year and a half ago. I am not worried the longer term because I do think that because of the data and because of those conversations happening, and they should be happening, we're going to be reversing hopefully course soon, and we'll have the ability to go back to funding potential therapies for cancer versus other things. So I do think that's a really important concern. We should be talking about it, lobbying about it, and helping shape policy more than we thought we should in the past to make sure that we don't have such cuts.
There's a theory that AI will pull more people into tech. I'm on the board of a polling company, and the data we just got in, or actually earlier this week, was the people most interested and excited about taking advantage of AI are people in emerging economies, people of color, and of course men. But a lot of this is, it says people who didn't have access to information and automation and intelligence at scale, advisors, they can't hire Bain or McKinsey, now they can. So there are going to be a lot of people who start new companies or do something around this technology because they can now. They didn't have access before. So I guess that's the positive upside part of it.
And I have one other.
Same here. That makes perfect sense.
And like just sort of finishing up, we've talked about the constraints. I'm curious, you invest in a pretty wide swathe of portfolio companies. What are the characteristics you find of companies that are really actually kind of aggressive internally? Like what are the things that they do right to really push on AI if you start with software and like implementation and development?
A part of it, at least the boards I'm on, did they have a technology-driven culture before? In other words, are they used to automating and thinking important technology? That's hard to create on the spot if you didn't have that already. And then all of the things that I talked about, are you ready? Is your infrastructure ready to do that? But the number one probably driver is it top-down? Does the CEO care about it? Is he asking about it? Is he pushing on it? If CEO cares about it, if he doesn't care about it, people can take their time a little bit. And when I've seen someone come, either a board member or a CEO, get excited about it, that's when stuff starts to happen.
For us, all of our CEOs are very technology driven because we do very deep tech stuff. But what I think is really unique is those that take it to the next level. So if you think, and very quickly, if you think about a company doing drug discovery, this is the first step. They're looking to identify targets. The second step is how do we help after we define the target for potential therapy? How do we help do drug design? And how can AI overlay help make that faster, cheaper, and increase the probability of it working? The third step is how do we use, again, AI and machine learning overlay to attract faster the right cohort of patients for the clinical trial, and taking that to the next level, making that a faster, cheaper, more effective way. So it's just like going deeper and deeper and deeper every day in the process, and essentially changing and expanding the business model of the entire company from drug discovery to design and access to clinical trials and beyond.
Well, this is fantastic. We ran out of time. Thank you both so much for all of this.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Welcome Minister of State for International Cooperation for UAE, Her Excellency, Reem Al Hashimi, and Semafor's Matthew Martin.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. And Your Excellency, Reem Al Hashimi, the UAE Minister of State for International Cooperation, welcome to Semafor. Thank you for coming.
It's lovely to be here. Thank you.
I wondered if, to begin with, you could just tell us a little bit about, everyone in the room will, of course, be familiar with what the Gulf region and what the UAE has been through over the past 6-7 weeks or so. But just from a sort of a human and emotional level, how has it been for you dealing with all of this going on, and also having to deal with being very involved in the diplomatic response as well?
So February 28th marked a really important moment in the UAE's history, because for the very first time, we received a barrage of missiles and drones from a country across the Arabian Gulf who we thought we could actually work with in a way that won't solicit a reaction of this magnitude. I'd like to remind the audience, on day one, we received 137 missiles, when the UAE had traditionally, repeatedly called for this war to not even happen. We very quickly, through an incredible integrated air defense system, managed to avert those missiles, the 300 plus drones that came in on day one, and every day since, until day 40, where there was a total of 2,800 missiles, ballistic and cruise, as well as drones. I mention these numbers because for a country of the size of the UAE, for a population that includes 200 different nationalities, and for a people that have always been peace-loving people, a people that have relationships with countries from all around the world and partnerships from all around the world, this was a very consequential moment. But the resolve, the resilience, the strength of our community, independent of nationality, really rose to the occasion in ways that surprised me on a personal level and reaffirmed the belief and the conviction that what the UAE has put on the table as a way of life, what the UAE has put on the table as a way to not just be prosperous, but also to live in security, really, really came through. Now, for the last couple of weeks, our children have been schooled through online learning, and that's been challenging for many families. But otherwise, you see life continue and go on, and our planes have moved in very quickly with almost 75 to 85% capacity. Mm-hmm. And that is a testament to incredible, incredible resilience and also incredible vision. And both of which I think is a testament to the leadership of the country and to the spirit of the people of the Emirates.
Yeah. And where do you see things going now? Obviously, we've had a first round of talks between the US and Iran. And how much input also are you, as the UAE, having on where you want to see those talks go?
So I think the most difficult piece of where we are right now in this continuum is what happens to the Strait of Hormuz. And for those of you who are unaware about the sheer significance of this strait, what we're really talking about is an international passageway, an international waterway that supplies several really important factors. The first one is 30% of global fertilizers, which means food security is at serious risk if urea doesn't get through, and that's a significant portion. You've got a good 25% of global gas, 25% of global oil, 70% of Asian petrochemicals, all fully reliant on this international passageway. And when the war began, Iran blocked that and began to pick and choose who can go and for what fee and when and how. And that is a clear violation of international law and of maritime security, which we are all advocates of. And so how we reopen and rather reallow pre-February 28th passageways to come through is really going to be the most important piece here. But in addition to that, February 28th revealed the IRGC's intent to its neighborhood. With missiles and drones, we cannot have a security arrangement through these talks that does not actually put a clear and final conclusion to missile and drone technology, to Navy, because we've seen what they could do with Hormuz, to their nuclear enrichment program. Those all need to be sorted through. Ultimately, geography prevails, so we're going to have to live with each other, the Gulf states and Iran. And the people of Iran and the people of the Gulf states cannot be taken hostage by a regime that is so malignant and malign and has clearly demonstrated that in no uncertain terms.
Mm. What is the UAE position on who should control the Strait of Hormuz?
Nobody should control the Strait of Hormuz. That's the whole point. International passageways they're a public good, and therefore all international public goods, just like the Straits of Malaga, just like others all around the world, necessitate that commercial vessels that carry food, oil, gas, etc., get to go to where they need to go.
Yeah.
And that is governed already through international statutes in very clear and uncertain terms. By seizing control, you actually weaponize. And then by demanding and enforcing who gets to go where and how, you're effectively violating that. And so no one country, no one party, no one grouping, right? It is an international public good. And many countries have come forward to say that as well, not just the US, who said either everything goes through or nothing should be able to go through, because this picking and choosing and adding a toll service isn't correct. But you have countries like the UK, like France, I know Japan is also looking at putting something together. You've obviously got the Indian subcontinent, all looking at ways in which we can not just ensure that the Strait of Hormuz is an open and constant free passage, but also that we don't create any kind of precedent anywhere else where international maritime can be taken as a weapon in this manner.
Yeah. You mentioned, you talked about the IRGC and, the role they've obviously had in targeting the UAE and the Gulf and being a bad neighbor in the region. What do you think the future of the UAE-Iran relationship is?
Well, it's difficult to say now because we don't know how this is going to evolve. But we are a nation that is incredibly practical and realistic about how we operate within our neighborhood and beyond that. Being attacked in 2026, after having been attacked in 2022 by the Houthis on January 17th, which is one of Iran's proxies, really does signal that there is nefarious, malignant intent in the IRGC. We're going to have to live with that and deal with it, but that does not mean that we're going to accept a status quo that interferes with my country's ambition for the future and its God-given right to lead that future in a manner that is not just prosperous for the people living in the UAE, but also beyond that. And so I get asked a lot, what future do you see? And as a mother and as a public servant, I obviously want a future that is peaceful. I mean, we all want that. But I also understand that it's unacceptable and unlawful to shoot out missiles at a fellow neighbor in such an indiscriminate manner and completely and totally unprovoked. And that is not something that my nation is going to accept moving forward.
Yeah. And going back onto the Strait of Hormuz, what role do you see the UAE playing in potentially reopening the strait?
So we're not involved in closing this off, right? And therefore, our role will continue to be one that advocates for the freedom of maritime passage. We work closely and in great partnership with so many of the international partners that I had mentioned to you before, the US, of course, being first and foremost, but also countries in Asia. We're very close to the Singaporeans, for example, who have their own the Straits of Malaga and look very closely at what happens there as well to set precedent. But by and large, if there is a way for us to participate in demining, in securing safe passageway, we'll obviously be part of that. But what is far more important to us right now is highlighting that this is not a regional issue, that the Straits of Hormuz and the continuous weaponization of that strait is impacting everybody, whether you like it or not, whether you're in Asia or you're reliant on, jet fuel in Europe, you're going to feel that impact if you haven't already. And therefore, building out an international coalition and consensus that a strait of this nature, and frankly, all straits, Bab el-Mandeb is not too far off, right? And Bab el-Mandeb connecting the Arab Sea to the Red Sea is also a very important passageway. All of these cannot be taken, quote unquote, by anyone and belong actually to everyone.
And with this conflict, there's been a lot of talk about how the Gulf region has ended up being sort of dragged into this conflict that it didn't want by the actions of the US and of Israel. How do you see the UAE-US relationship going forward? It's obviously been crucial in the past and has been crucial through this conflict for supplying the interceptors and things that you've been using to defend. I mean, do you still see the US as being that reliable security partner?
We've had a relationship with the United States since our very inception in the early 70s. And I continue to see that relationship getting stronger, and I definitely see it becoming more and more diversified. But Matthew, it's really beyond security alone. We have already invested about $1 trillion in the US economy. And we've committed to investing another 1.4 last year, over 10 years. We have almost 65,000 Americans living in the UAE, and our trade is over $35 billion. That tells you that this is a relationship that is not just diversified, but it's also an ambitious relationship that goes, from one administration to another, independent of which political party it pertains to. What that means is, we are here right now. The war happened. We received the brunt of the attacks. We know now who we're dealing with, but we also know that we're going to have to find practical solutions so that we can salvage and preserve our own national ambitions and vision, but also where my nation wants to go. And so we were chatting earlier about the Artemis and about how I would have never thought that a country that's 50 plus years old would also have a space program as deep and as advanced as we do, and to have actually developed this relationship also with the United States. And I was reminded that this month marks the 3rd year that the first Emirati astronaut, Hazza al-Mansouri, went on the ISI. So these proof points are to tell you we're not a people or a nation that's fixated on one aspect of, let's say, on defense alone. Having said that, defense is pretty critical because without that defense, we wouldn't be where we are today. But we're also a people that is optimistic, that is ambitious. We have an AI program that is incredibly, incredibly bold, because we want to change the trajectory of human prosperity through this AI program. We believe in culture and respecting of different cultures, which is why we have 200 nationalities that live in the UAE with all of their religions and denominations in peace and in harmony. And more important than that, Matthew, we are a people that is hopeful. And if you look at who we were 50 years ago, with very limited means, to who we are today, and how much of that we want to share with the world, you can get a sense of the type of character of the Emirati people. And that, I think, has been the most powerful revelation since February 28th, is that character was actually reinforced. We were not stripped from that character of optimism, of resilience, of resolve, of hope. On the contrary, we doubled down on that. And we are already looking at what are our new plans now in strengthening our eastern coast to avoid being so vulnerable down the line. How do we double down, triple down on technology, on infrastructure, on our railway? We have an incredible Etihad rail that's connecting the Emirates to each other and the different vicinities within the UAE for both people but also cargo. And who are we going to do that with? Who are the partnerships that February 28th has revealed? I'll give you an example just very briefly on our relationship with South Korea and Australia, our relationship, for example, with the French and with the Cypriots. These are just small indications of who we're doing this with, but with the United States, a country of this fortitude and magnitude, and this trajectory and history of a 50-plus year relationship with one another, has really proven that we will continue to keep those pillars strong, but also continue to reimagine what more we could do together.
Yeah. And you talked about a lot of that international cooperation there. What do you think this conflict means for regional integration within the Gulf as well?
I think there were some really hard lessons for us. We understood a lot. I'll give the example of Bahrain, just how incredibly resilient the Bahraini people are, and how incredibly, not just strong, but bold the Bahraini civil service and the Bahraini defense team were in averting the attacks that they encountered, Bahrain did incredibly well, does incredibly well. We've also discovered that there were some fault lines between us as the GCC. And those, I think, don't take away from the necessity of us collectively dealing with this threat, but it has been an eye-opener for us to realize not just different capabilities across the Gulf, but also different orientations across the Gulf. What we've taken out of this is, how do we learn, adapt, and just move forward with the same tempo of not just strength and resolve, but also ambition and sort of leaning in, because that's also who we've always been as a people. I think net-net, perhaps the most powerful manifestation, the most powerful conclusion of February 28th has been the incredible unity of the Emirati community. And sticking together in this way, independent of, like I said, nationality or background, has been so heartwarming to see. You know, everybody expected everybody would leave the UAE. Nobody left. Well, obviously there were some who left, but really nothing in terms of the scale that was projected. And that people who chose to stay, because they love the UAE. They love the home that they've created and the lifestyle that they have. And it can be difficult to stay in this environment, but they chose to stay because they believe in the leadership. There's no marketing campaign, Matthew, that will get you there. And that is a testament, maybe the biggest testament to why our model works, because people bought into it and they believed in it and they became their own advocates of it. And I say this with such humility and respect to those that have decided that the UAE is their home. They may not have the UAE nationality, but it's a home that they will protect, that they will defend, and that they would advocate for. And that is in stark difference to the type of model that the IRGC has projected and other malignant and nefarious groups that use the population for their own political objectives. We're in a really blessed setup where it's the people of the UAE, all the people of the UAE, who really rose to the occasion.
Yeah. And just as a final question, what do you see, what is the role of Israel in the region as well? The UAE is obviously a signatory to the Abraham Accords, so you have direct relationship with Israel now. How do you see that evolving over time?
So we signed the Abrahamic Accords a couple of years ago to really reimagine what the Middle East could look like in ways that would take us away from a conflict that has gone on for decades, for us to be able to dialogue and integrate directly with Israeli leadership about how we also saw the fate and the destiny of the region. I see us continuing that relationship. I see us continuing to work closely with them about how we avert some of the bigger challenges that our region faces. And I also see that there's incredible opportunity for us to do, others in the region as well, to be able to do a lot more so that we can create a type of future for our populations that is just as prosperous and just as ambitious as the UAE's always set out to have.
Yeah. Well, look, thank you. We could go on a lot longer, but I'm afraid our time is up. So thank you very much, Your Excellency. Rima Hashmi, please show your appreciation. Thank you.
Thank you for attending today's live journalism, and to our partners Philip Morris International and Lippincott. We hope to see you here for our afternoon programme at 1:30 p.m.